Back in 1912, British newspapers were buzzing with one bold claim: the first humans appeared in Britain, not Africa. It felt like history itself had been rewritten, and everyone bought into it. Crowds cheered, scientists raised their glasses, and the tiny village of Piltdown in Sussex suddenly became the spotlight for what was hailed as the greatest evolutionary discovery ever. It all happened thanks to this guy, Charles Dawson, a curious amateur archaeologist who was dreaming of making a name in science. He claimed he had found bone fragments of a transitional creature between apes and humans. Dawson teamed up with Arthur Smith Woodward, a respected geologist from the Natural History Museum, and together they assembled fragments of skulls, teeth, and even primitive tools. They unveiled their find, the Piltdown Man, to the Geological Society, and for decades everyone believed it. Textbooks even rewrote human evolution around it, and entire generations memorized it as pure truth. But here's the twist. In 1949, new technology to determine the precise age of objects came along, and things just didn't add up. Tests showed that the skull was only about 50,000 years old, not hundreds of thousands. Then came an even bigger shock. The skull and jaw didn't even belong to the same species. Someone had combined a human skull with the jaw of an ape, probably an orangutan. And even worse, they filed down the teeth to make them look more human and stained the bones to match the surrounding gravel. A Frankenstein fossil and its creator managed to trick the entire world into believing they'd found a missing piece of humanity's puzzle. So Dawson went down in scientific history, but probably not the way he was hoping to. And he wasn't the only one. Some did it for money, others for fame. In the late 19th century Paris, museums were collecting ancient treasures like they were trading cards. When a stunning gold tiara, supposedly belonging to an ancient Scythian king, Ctesiphon, appeared on the market, the Louvre had to have it. It was breathtaking, detailed, majestic, fit for a ruler. The museum proudly paid a fortune and displayed it as a masterpiece of ancient craftsmanship. Then came the heartbreak. A few years later, an entrepreneurial goldsmith from Odessa read about the Louvre's glorious find and burst out laughing. He recognized the tiara because he made it with his own hands. It was a modern piece, a commission he created for local dealers, except they never told him they planned to pass it off as an ancient treasure. The Louvre was humiliated. Once again, the whole world believed in a beautiful lie, and the goldsmith who had just made the museum look ridiculous ended up famous in the world of art. The tiara still holds the Guinness World Record for the greatest goldsmith fraud of all time. Another story of a well-planned scientific hoax takes us to a quiet town of Cardiff, New York, a couple of decades before the Louvre incident. In 1869, workers digging a well struck something hard and enormous. They uncovered what looked like a petrified 10-foot-tall man lying in the earth. Crowds poured in from miles around to see it. Preachers called it proof of the biblical giants mentioned in Genesis. Scientists debated whether it was fossilized or divine. Within days, the Cardiff Giant became a sensation. People paid good money to see it, 50 cents a ticket, which was a lot back then. Later, it turned out that a man named George Hull carved the mysterious giant from gypsum after an argument with a Methodist reverend. Hull just wanted to prove how easily you can fool people, especially religious believers, unlike himself. So he buried the fake giant, and it worked too well. Even after experts exposed the hoax, visitors didn't care. They kept coming because they wanted to believe. Over time, the giant changed ownership several times. You can now see it at the Fenimore Farm and Country Village Museum in Cooperstown, New York. Well, speaking of museums, you might have seen crystal skulls that glow under light, presented as sacred artifacts from Mesoamerican temples. Yes, that skull from an Indiana Jones movie with ancient Aztec powers or even extraterrestrial energy. So, museums displayed such skulls proudly until scientists at the British Museum and the Smithsonian decided to give them a closer look, and what they found shattered the myth. They found that the skulls were made with modern rotary tools and abrasives that ancient carvers didn't have. In other words, Someone in the 1800s or 1900s made them using modern machinery and fooled the world. They weren't messages from deities or some advanced creatures from space, just very fancy paperweights that tricked so many people into believing in some ancient superpowers. Well, let's jump several decades closer to the present day, shall we? In the 1960s, Yale University revealed what looked like a discovery that could rewrite world history: a 15th century map showing North America labeled Vinland. It meant Vikings had mapped America long before Columbus. The headlines were sensational. The idea was romantic: explorers crossing icy seas century before Europe even knew America existed. But something just didn't add up. The parchment was generally medieval, but the ink wasn't. Decades of testing revealed it contained titanium dioxide, a pigment invented in the 20th century. In 2021, Yale confirmed it. The Vinland map was a modern forgery, drawn over old parchment to make it look ancient. It wasn't proof of Viking genius, but rather of human cleverness on one side and the tendency to be easily persuaded on the other. And when we speak of persuasion, you don't have to try too hard when a really trustworthy source like National Geographic shares something, right? Well, in 1999, it presented what it thought was the ultimate discovery: a fossil that bridged the gap between dinosaurs and birds. It was called Archaeoraptor, and it was going to change everything we knew about evolution. The fossil came from China, and on first glance, it was perfect: a dinosaur tail, bird-like wings, and bones that seemed to tell the story of flight's evolution. But soon, paleontologists started whispering. The bones didn't quite line up. CT scans revealed the ugly truth. It was literally glued together from parts of different species. A dinosaur tail from one fossil, a bird body from another. Someone had Frankensteined the fossils to make a more valuable specimen. The embarrassment hit hard, especially for National Geographic, which had built an entire story around a fake the world liked to believe. Now, if you think scientific hoaxes are all in the past because of all the 20th century high-tech, here's a surprise for you. In 2020, the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. made a stunning confession. All 16 fragments of its prized Dead Sea Scroll collection were modern forgeries. They'd spent millions acquiring what they thought were sacred 2,000-year-old texts, only to learn they were made of ancient leather painted with modern ink. The forgery was so advanced that even experts were fooled at first. But after detailed forensic tests, it became clear the holy relics were anything but holy. It wasn't just about money, it was about faith. Thousands of visitors had stood in front of those glass cases, feeling awe, reverence, and connection, only to learn it was a show built on lies. And finally, it's time for one of the eeriest hoaxes of all. In 2000, a mummy surfaced in Pakistan, claiming to be a 26-year-old Persian princess, the daughter of Xerxes. They found her in a gilded sarcophagus, wrapped in golden robes. Her face was eerily well preserved. Archaeologists were stunned, but something about her looked wrong. CT scans, linguistic analysis, and radiocarbon dating revealed the horrifying truth. The mummy wasn't ancient at all. She was a modern woman, and someone likely took her life and then mummified her to sell as a fake relic. Well, yikes. The story went from exciting to tragic overnight and broke many hearts. What was supposed to be a royal miracle turned out to be a human crime and yet another lie. All these stories have one thing in common: hope. People want to believe. They want to touch the past, to find proof that connects them to something bigger. Whether it's scientists looking for the missing link, museums wanting fame, or believers searching for signs of faith, we all crave wonder. History is full of tricksters, and sometimes the best stories come from the fakes that fooled us all.
You're heading to Spain with a team of archaeologists to try to find some ancient artifacts. You get lucky and uncover one of the greatest treasures of the Iberian Bronze Age. Iberian refers to the Bronze Age culture of Portugal and Spain. So you find and unearth coins, jewelry, vases, vessels, and two pretty strange items. One is something like a part of a scepter, and the other resembles a bracelet. And you know what's strange about them? They're connected with space. In 1963, several miles away from the city of Villena, Spain, scientists discovered the Treasure of Villena, one of the most significant gold hoards from the Bronze Age. Interestingly, are there bronze treasures from the Golden Age? Never mind. All the gold found dates back to sometime between 1500 and 1200 BCE, except for that scepter and bracelet. They were made by inhabitants of another planet, so their production date is unknown. Okay, that's a joke. However, a small part of this joke is true. When scientists studied the found gold, they discovered that those two items were made of iron. So what, you might think? Well, the catch is that in the Bronze Age, people didn't mine or manufacture iron. Work with this metal began around 850 BCE, about 400 to 700 years after the creation of the Treasure of Villena. How is this possible? A clue to this mystery can be found in ancient Egypt. In the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun, an iron dagger was found, which was also made of similar iron. But this dagger was much more valuable than all the others. And that's because it was made from a space object, a meteorite. Yeah, that bracelet and scepter were also made of meteoritic iron. Its difference from Earth metal is that cosmic iron has a high nickel content, so it all makes sense. People from the Bronze Age couldn't mine iron from the deep bowels of our planet, but nothing prevented them from collecting iron falling from the sky. Just imagine how cool it is to have jewelry or a dagger made of material that has traveled millions of years through the vast expanses of space. Perhaps it even contains particles of an ancient extinct star. Today, these two artifacts from the Treasure of Villena are the oldest recorded items in the Iberian Peninsula made of meteoritic iron. Now, with everything in its place, you can turn your attention to all the wealth of the Treasure of Villena. It contains 66 items: bowls, bracelets, bottles, gold jewelry, 3 silver bottles, and an amber gold button. 22 pounds of ancient gold. People hid it, and only after 3,000 years we were able to discover it. This archaeologist's dream can be found in the Villena Museum, where exhibits from different time periods are presented, from prehistoric times like 50,000 years ago to the present day. Items from the Iberian period, from the Roman period, from the Arab civilization. You can find not only jewelry and coins, but there are also remnants of columns, ceramics, and other architectural artifacts. The collection is considered one of the most important prehistoric treasures of Europe. And the coolest thing is that you can see it all with your own eyes for just €2, which is about $2. Go to Villena, find the museum, and enjoy. Hey buddy, I heard you have a metal detector. Could you help me find a hammer I left somewhere in the field? Your old farmer friend asks. You take a metal detector and go searching, but instead of a hammer, you find hundreds, even thousands of silver coins worth $2 million. You're so happy that the farmer lost that hammer, and now you're rich. Stop! Considering that this land belongs to the farmer, would you tell him about the find or take it with you? In reality, neither of these options happened. In 1992, Eric Laws was helping a farmer search for a lost hammer in a field near Hoxne, Suffolk, England. The metal detector stumbled upon a hidden treasure, a huge one. There were silver spoons, gold jewelry, more than 500 gold coins, and about 14,000 silver ones. Eric Laws accidentally discovered the largest collection of gold and silver from the late Roman period in Britain. Unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, he and the farmer didn't receive the treasure. It's now in the British Museum. Let's move away from the farmer's field to somewhere on the Mediterranean coast. Imagine you're a scuba diver. There was a strong storm yesterday, but now with the water calm, you dive in and discover the seabed covered with gold dinars. This story happened in 2015. The coins which the storm brought to the shore might have been minted even before the First Crusade that started in 1096. This collection is one of the most impressive archaeological finds in the world. All these treasures surely can make the heads of those who find them spin, but they end up in a museum. And that's a good thing, because such wealth can drive a person crazy. A metal detector and a diving suit helped people discover ancient treasures. What's next? How about a dog? Yes, it could be perhaps a great replacement for a metal detector, by the way. So in 2013, two people were walking their dog in Northern California on their property. Suddenly, they discovered a rusty can filled with coins minted from 1847 to 1894. There were about 1,500 coins, and they all were gold. Another chance for a carefree, rich future? Not this time. The find caused a lot of controversy among specialists. There was one version, according to which these coins could have been stolen from the US Mint. But later, the US Mint debunked this suggestion, as they'd never had this gold in their storage. Anyway, it's interesting what the point was in hiding it all in someone else's yard. Some thief risked their freedom and life to get rich. When they succeeded, they just hid the coins as if they never existed. What a strange deal. Coins, jewelry, meteorite items, it's all cool. But let's end our video with something grand and epic. Archaeologists were conducting research near the Mediterranean coast of Egypt and discovered a treasure trove inside a sunken temple and sanctuary. Despite the waves, earthquakes, and seawater, the massive find was preserved in a not bad condition. The temple was built a very long time ago and collapsed in the middle of the 2nd century BCE. It was an important structure in ancient Egypt. People considered this place holy. Pharaohs came to the temple to seek help from the higher powers of Egyptian mythology to obtain titles for their rule. Titles of kings of the universe. For many people, this place was like the center of the universe, and now it lies forgotten on the seabed, almost ruined. Time spares nothing. Researchers found out the temple had been part of an ancient port city. A long time ago, an earthquake occurred in this area and destroyed the city. Tidal waves softened the ground and dragged the town into the Mediterranean Sea. While studying the temple, scientists found many secret treasures there: silver ceremonial instruments, gold jewelry, and alabaster vessels. In past times, people used them to store perfumes or greasy ointments called unguents. Perhaps in ancient Egypt, they weren't bad in the field of cosmetology. Near the temple, archaeologists discovered a Greek sanctuary. Apparently, the Greeks living in Egypt or coming here on business wanted to pay tribute to Aphrodite, so they created a small building in her honor. In that place, archaeologists found bronze and ceramic artifacts from different cultures. Scientists found out that the Greeks had permission to trade in the Egyptian city and even be its residents. It seems pharaohs living around 600 BCE were favorable to the Greeks. The profession of an archaeologist is very exciting. But what would you do if you found some ancient treasure? Before answering this question, find out what law applies to such finds in your country.
Humanity has been looking to the stars, searching for secrets that outer space is hiding. But deep underground, within the soil of our own planet, there are literal troves of fantastic things just waiting to be discovered. How can you talk about excavations and not mention Egypt? In 2019, archaeologists uncovered a tomb of a high official in South Saqqara who lived about 4,400 years ago. His name was Kui, and the hieroglyphs on the walls of the tomb recited his many titles, one of which was the sole friend of the pharaoh of the time. The discovery could have been pretty usual for Egypt, if not for the tomb's interior. The walls, the ceiling, and even parts of the floor were covered in hieroglyphs, pictures, and intricate patterns. But what surprised the scientists the most was how well preserved the colors of those images were. Despite the cracks and chips on the walls and the ceiling, they were still bright and vivid, almost as if they had been painted recently. In Israel, a whole city was discovered by archaeologists in 2019. It dated back 5,000 years to the early Bronze Age and was home to about 6,000 people. Millions of tools, fragments of pottery items, and stone vessels were found at the site. Scientists say the city was so huge, it could be called the New York of the period. The megalopolis was carefully planned, with dozens of streets, alleyways, and public and residential areas. Archaeologists state that the citizens used to live and trade not only with different regions, but also with various cultures and kingdoms. Bar Hill is an Iron Age settlement in eastern England, and archaeologists suddenly stumbled upon a very unusual thing there. As they were scouting the area, they looked inside one particular ditch and found thousands of frog bones. Later calculations showed more than 8,000 bones belonged to frogs and toads. There were no signs of damage. The bones lay in heaps and piles. Scientists have no idea what could have drawn so many frogs and toads to a single place. It's known that local people of the time ate frogs, so the settlement's inhabitants could have brought them there. Other versions state that the frogs could have come for the large amounts of insects feeding on the crops, or they may have been looking for a body of water and got trapped in the ditch. As for now, the frog mystery remains unsolved. Not so much mysterious as amusing. A nearly 1,800-year-old insult was found carved in stone, not far from Hadrian's Wall in England. An ancient Roman fort just south of the wall had a lot of writing tablets, but this particular one was especially curious because of its contents. The stone mentioned some Secundinus and said a pretty nasty thing about him. In fact, this is the first stone graffiti ever found that indicates Romans did have quarrels amongst themselves. A rancher in Wyoming, not far from the town of Newcastle, was going about his ranching business when he suddenly stumbled upon a weird bone sticking out from the soil. As he carefully dug it out, he realized the bone belonged to a huge creature. It was larger than a bear. But even so, there were no bears in the area. The rancher called scientists to figure out what it was all about. When they excavated the parts, they ended up with 3 skeletons of dinosaurs, Triceratops to be precise. Researchers were astounded by the discovery for 2 reasons. First, the skeletons were surprisingly complete. There were limb bones, skull parts, feet, and parts of tails. Second, Triceratops had been considered loners because all the previously found skeletons were found alone. In this case, there were 3 of them. One seemed to be a youth, while the 2 others were probably its parents. Judging by the tooth marks on the bones of the largest of the 3, a T-Rex attacked the family, and they couldn't escape from the huge predator. The catacombs of Paris are yet to be fully charted, and strange things keep coming up down there. One of them was found in August of 2004. The local police were having a routine training exercise in the caverns not far from the Eiffel Tower when they unexpectedly came upon a large cave transformed into a fully equipped movie theater. The chamber had an arena where the viewers would sit, a full-sized screen, a projector, and many movies to watch. Interestingly, they were all regular ones, featuring 50s noir films and more recent pictures. There was also a second, smaller cavern adjacent to the first one, which was used as a restaurant. Someone installed an electricity system and at least 3 phone lines in the underground cinema. But the most sinister thing happened when the officers returned to the site 3 days later to further investigate the matter. They found that all the power cables and phone lines had been cut, and a mysterious handwritten note was lying in the middle of the floor, saying, "Do not try to find us." Nobody still knows who built that underground movie theater and why. In 1948, the first report came about a puzzling 93-mile-long wall built in Jordan. It's still unknown who made it, when, and why. Its purpose is not defensive. It was too low and narrow to have protected anything from anyone. It lies in ruins today, of course, but when it was still quite new, most of it was about 3 feet tall and 1.5 feet wide. The most popular theory explains that the strange wall might have served as a farmland boundary. Researchers found traces of ancient agricultural lands to the west of the wall. The boundary might have protected those from hungry goats emerging from the east with nomadic tribes. While we're still in Jordan, there's one more mystery here: stone circles that date back 2,000 years. They're pretty big, with a diameter of about 1,300 feet or more. So far, scientists have discovered 11 of these big circles. Yes, that's their official name. Still, they're just a couple of feet high, making them even more puzzling. Originally, Researchers believed they were huge corrals for animals, but there are no openings between the stones the circles are made from to let people or cattle in or out. Currently, no one knows who built these ancient structures or why. Archaeologists in Glasgow excavated a 5,000-year-old stone slab in 2016 and then buried it again. The slab is called the Cochno Stone and has been known to the locals since the 19th century. The stone is large and flat, measuring 43 by 26 feet, and has swirling decorations that had been found at many other prehistoric sites across the globe. The stone was first fully excavated in 1887, but within the following decades, it was covered in graffiti by unknown people. So, to avoid further damage, a group of archaeologists buried it in the ground again in 1965. And then, in 2016, another group of researchers unearthed the Cochno Stone again to record the artwork using modern photography and surveying techniques. You've heard all about Stonehenge, but what about the Superhenge? In 2015, archaeologists couldn't believe their eyes when they discovered a whole number of stone monoliths just a couple of miles away from Stonehenge. They had once stood upright, but about 4,500 years ago, the wind and erosion of the ground must have pushed them over, which is why nobody had discovered them earlier. Their purpose remains unknown, but scientists have a few theories. It could have been a giant Neolithic monument, or it could have formed a C-shaped arena leading down to the Avon River nearby. The springs and a valley completed the picture, so the Superhenge might have served as some sort of a decoration or even as part of a larger structure combined with the Stonehenge not far away.
Egypt has ruled as the owner of the world's oldest pyramid, until now. A newly discovered structure in Indonesia may predate Egypt by thousands of years. If this is true, it rewrites history. The world's first pyramid was born during the last ice age, and it's now located in the middle of the jungle. At first glance, Gunung Padang does not exactly scream pyramid. It looks more like a big mound with scattered stones tossed all over it. But recent excavations have revealed that far beneath the surface, there are stone structures buried in multiple layers, deeper and much older than anyone expected. We're talking possibly 27,000 years old. This is serious if we're talking about humankind's history. Today, the oldest known ancient society with this kind of building knowledge is probably 11,000 years old and used to occupy the region of modern-day Turkey. We've talked about Gobekli Tepe in some of our previous videos. Gunung Padang has got the scientific community divided and raising big, life-changing questions. You see, the site of Gunung Padang has long been considered sacred by the locals. Many even call it the Mountain of Enlightenment and still use the site to perform mystical ceremonies. Westerners had no clue this place existed until the late 1800s. That's when a Dutch explorer heard whispers about a strange mountain and went to see it for himself. Just 4 hours south of Jakarta, he found something wild. Stacked terraces connected by rough stone steps, massive flat stones covering the ground, and towering pillars everywhere. To him, it looked like an ancient ceremonial site, maybe even a burial ground. For almost 100 years, mainstream archaeologists simply ignored Gunung Padang. The story resurfaced when a group of farmers brought attention back to the mountain in 1979. By the 80s, researchers finally started digging and found pottery fragments dating back to somewhere between 45 BCE to 22 CE. But here's where this story gets interesting. Some studies suggest the deepest layers of Gunung Padang are between 16 to 27,000 years old. That means this pyramid could have been built during the last ice age. And if that's true, it's older than Egypt's famous pyramids, the ones we thought were the world's first. This whole theory comes from geologist Danny Hillman. His team used ground-penetrating radar, core drilling, and carbon dating to study Gunung Padang, and what they found was pretty wild. According to Hillman, this place is like a giant ancient layer cake, built in stages over thousands of years. The youngest layer is around 3,000 to 4,000 years old. That's roughly the age of the pyramids in Egypt. When you dig a little deeper, you find Unit 2, which was built between 7,500 and 8,000 years ago. But here's where things get truly mind-blowing. Hillman claims the deepest layer, Unit 3, could be as old as 27,000 years old. His study suggests that Gunung Padang isn't just a hill. It's a stepped pyramid, complete with chambers and hollow spaces hidden underground. Although there's not much info about these chambers. The geologist does admit his theory sounds crazy, but he says it's all real and legitimate data. Hey, this is just one theory. Those who disagree with Hillman say Gunung Padang was not man-made. It was nature-made. Maybe not the upper parts, which Hillman calls Unit 1. The lowest units, which are the units that could change our collective history, are the problem. To understand what the fuss is about, we need to look at the soil. The area that Gunung Padang was built on is filled with volcanoes, which means it sits on top of volcanic soil. Hillman's team drilled into the mound and found something odd. Younger soil wedged between much older rock layers. To them, this was a clear sign that the stones were stacked, not naturally formed. After all, in nature, younger soil doesn't just sink beneath ancient rock. That would be like discovering fresh ink beneath the pages of an ancient manuscript. You know, something doesn't add up unless someone put it there on purpose. However, skeptics such as volcanologist Sudkinel Brauntal argue that Gunung Padang is not a human-made pyramid, but rather the remains of an ancient volcano. He believes the mixed layers of young soil and old rock are the result of natural erosion and geological processes, not human construction. Volcanic activity can create unusual formations over time, and without clear signs of tools, carvings, or human remains, many experts remain unconvinced. The mystery boils down to this paradox. Are we looking at the ruins of a lost civilization, or are we simply misinterpreting the work of nature? Most archaeologists say that to prove an ancient civilization existed, you first need signs of culture, art, tools, structures, something man-made. That's exactly why archaeologist Dibble, one of Hillman's biggest critics, isn't buying the pyramid theory. He argues that without solid proof of human activity, all we really know is that the soil in the mound is 27,000 years old, and that alone doesn't mean people were building pyramids back then. But here's the thing. The more we dig into ancient history, the more we find that our ancestors were capable of things we never imagined. The idea of advanced civilizations existing during the Ice Age seems far-fetched to many archaeologists. After all, who could have the technology and knowledge to build massive structures like pyramids in such a harsh environment? This is where some researchers, particularly Graham Hancock, come in. Hancock is known for his controversial theories that say that advanced civilizations may have existed during the Ice Age. The last Ice Age lasted from about 2.5 million years ago to roughly 11,700 years ago. During its peak, huge ice sheets covered large parts of North America, Europe, and Asia, making it a challenging time for human survival. Most archaeologists believe that humans during this period were mainly hunter-gatherers, moving from place to place in search of food and shelter. The idea that they had skills to build a massive pyramid-like structure is hard for many to accept. However, researchers like Graham Hancock argue that advanced Ice Age civilizations could have existed and been wiped out by cataclysmic events such as floods caused by melting glaciers. According to Hancock, these ancient cultures may have built monumental structures like pyramids. One of Hancock's most notable books, Fingerprints of the Gods, explores this theory in depth. He looks at evidence from ancient monuments, like Egypt's Great Pyramid of Giza and the megalithic structures in South America, and suggests that these could be the remnants of a forgotten civilization. Hancock's theories imply that knowledge and skills passed down from this ancient culture were eventually rediscovered and used by later civilizations, like the Egyptians and Mayans. If we apply this to Gunung Padang, the idea becomes even more fascinating. Could this ancient site in Indonesia be a remnant of a long-lost civilization that existed during the last ice age? We'll have to keep digging to figure this out. Either way, while scientists debate the origins of Gunung Padang, local myths offer a different explanation. One of the most famous local legends tells the story of King Siliwangi, a powerful ruler who wanted to build a grand palace in a single night. With supernatural strength, he began stacking enormous stones to create his masterpiece. But as the first light of dawn appeared, he realized he had failed to finish in time. Frustrated, he abandoned the project, leaving behind the massive rock formations that we see today. While this story isn't historical fact, it reflects how deeply Gunung Padang is embedded in the local culture. Even today, the site is considered a place of spiritual energy, attracting visitors who believe in its mystical power. Hindus from the island of Bali climb the mountain steps to conduct rituals related to the rising of the full moon. Followers of a variant of Indonesian martial art practice their discipline high on the mountain. As these sacred rituals continue, archaeology and geology keep trying to figure out if this really is the oldest man-made structure in the world.
Have you heard of Gobekli Tepe? It's an ancient site in Turkey that literally made historians rewrite history books. Over 11,000 years ago, a group of prehistoric humans crafted an enigmatic masterpiece that's even older than Stonehenge. Before its discovery, archaeologists believed that people didn't know about iron and weren't good at making pottery. They were sure that settled life only emerged with the need for agriculture. But Gobekli Tepe changed this belief. The place has revealed that it was the temple that paved the way for a settled life, not agriculture. Until this discovery, researchers believed that farming was the catalyst for sedentary living. Meet Professor Schmidt, the guy whose findings changed this theory. He managed to prove that hunter-gatherer communities laid the very foundations of this way of life. Back in the 1960s, other archaeologists visited the area, but they totally missed the mark. While surveying the region, they stumbled upon a hill with scattered limestone slabs and concluded it was just an old burial ground from medieval times. Little did they know that there was so much more to uncover. In 1994, Schmidt embarked on his own survey of prehistoric sites in the area. Surprise! He instantly realized he had discovered something truly extraordinary. Unlike the nearby flat and barren plateaus, Gobekli Tepe had a gently rounded top, rising 50 feet above the surrounding landscape. Funny enough, the translation of this place's name is Potbelly Hill. Schmidt was sure only humans could have made something like this. Those broken limestone pieces that were mistaken for gravestones turned out to be way more exciting. It was like stumbling upon a hidden treasure. The pieces took on a whole new meaning, and Schmidt with his team was about to dive into the secrets waiting beneath the surface. To their surprise, they found no traces of a settlement. No hearths for cooking, no houses, and none of those adorable clay figurines commonly found in nearby sites of similar age. However, they uncovered that those ancient people used tools like stone hammers. So, Schmidt and his team put their heads together and took a wild guess at the age of Gobekli Tepe's stone structures. Their estimation got backed up by some limited carbon dating done right at the site. The ancient vibes of this place were finally starting to make sense. It was like a puzzle slowly coming together. You may think that back then, people didn't have special tools to create something as cool as Gobekli Tepe. Not true. Turns out, these prehistoric folks used flint tools instead of fancy metal chisels. They were also skilled at chipping away softer limestone and crafting pillars right on the spot. Afterward, they carried the pillars a short distance to the summit and placed them upright. Once the stone rings were complete, they covered them with layers of dirt. Over time, they added new rings, and voila! You've got a cool hill to impress people in the future. During their first year of excavation, the team went through 15,000 pieces of animal bones from wild creatures. These people didn't have pet animals or grow their own food. They hunted wild animals for their meals. But things were about to change because the place had everything they needed to start farming. Scientists say they had wild sheep and wild grains that could be domesticated. And guess what? Just 20 miles away, geneticists found evidence of the world's oldest domesticated strains of wheat at a prehistoric village. These amazing findings have completely changed how we view civilization. In the past, experts believed that people needed to learn how to farm and settle in one place before they could build temples and develop complex societies. But guess what? Schmidt's research flips that idea on its head. He claims that the incredible effort put into constructing these astonishing structures actually set the stage for the development of advanced societies. It means that societal and cultural changes happened before agriculture. Schmidt has this fascinating hypothesis about Gobekli Tepe. He thinks it could have been a special burial site where people left their loved ones. And here's the twist. The burial site was adorned with fancy statues and symbols representing deities from the spiritual realm. The idea that Gobekli Tepe could have served as a sacred place adds another layer of complexity to the whole story. While the site's true purpose may remain elusive, Schmidt's insights invite us to consider the profound interplay between life and the afterlife, and the deep reverence ancient hunter-gatherer societies may have had for their departed ancestors. Now let's talk about the stars of the show, the mesmerizing T-shaped columns that dominate Gobekli Tepe. These mysterious structures range from 10 to 20 feet tall and most likely represent stylized human figures. But one figure stands out from the rest, the three-dimensional lion relief. This depiction really fires up our imagination. Why? Because it hints at the possibility that lions roamed Anatolia during the Neolithic period. These standing stones are arranged in circles and placed in rectangular pits. Each circle has a similar setup. Two big T-shaped pillars in the center, surrounded by slightly smaller ones facing inward. Talk about a stylish arrangement. These towering pillars reach a whopping 16 feet and weigh between 7 and 10 tons. Some pillars are plain and simple, while others are like works of art with intricate carvings. Foxes, scorpions, and vultures come to life, crawling and twisting on the pillars' sides. But it's not just animals depicted on these stones. Some pillars have abstract shapes representing humans, and even small carvings of clothing items. Some of them even have belts. Now, there's one pillar that stands out from the rest like a rock star. This super old stone pillar suggests that a comet crashed into Earth. It happened during a chilly period that lasted about 1,000 years. Previous studies examining Greenland ice cores hinted at this comet theory, but now the carvings at Gobekli Tepe prove it right. The carvings on the pillars are like a historical comic strip. They even show a headless human figure. Researchers fed the images into a computer and discovered their connections to constellations, indicating that this temple might have been an ancient observatory. It's like our ancestors were trying to document this cataclysmic event in their own unique way. Archaeologists have been excavating and researching Gobekli Tepe since the mid-1990s, peeling back layers of history and providing us with a deeper understanding of the intricate relationship between various elements. They have no plans to stop the whole process for another 150 years. Who knows what else they'll find? You see, Gobekli Tepe has been labeled purely as a ritual site with no signs of domestic activities. We were led to believe that the absence of water meant it couldn't support semi-sedentary communities. But scientists believe it's time to shake things up and approach Gobekli Tepe with fresh eyes. It's time to question what we believed before and use new evidence and different ways of thinking. Like, there might have been a group of people living in the area who didn't stay in one place all the time. They moved around a bit but still had their own civilization, living in the area semi-sedentarily. Gobekli Tepe is not just home to a single temple. but an astounding collection of over 20 ancient structures. As archaeologists delve into the depths of this wonder, they are unraveling its unique layout, featuring 2 prominent focal points at the heart of each establishment, complemented by smaller structures and dividing walls. What's even crazier is that in this area, there are over 200 obelisks, which are narrow tapering monuments.
Do you know how much gold has been mined by humans throughout history? About 216,000 tons, and 2/3 of this amount was mined after the 1950s. Different countries, different times, thousands of different people involved. But what if you found huge deposits of gold in one place? What if a giant gold ore deposit was discovered? No, not just giant, but super giant. This is exactly what was found in China. A group of geologists discovered about 40 gold veins with about 330 tons of gold ore. But that's not all. 3D modeling has shown that even more gold lies underneath. At a depth of about 9,800 feet, there may be several hundred more tons. In short, there is a chance that they will discover deposits with about 1,100 tons of gold. Can you imagine how much that is? If not, that's about $83 billion. Wow! Experts say that this deposit contains approximately 4.9 ounces per ton of ore. It seems that this is negligible, but in fact, it's a high indicator in gold mining. Usually, 0.35 ounces per ton is awesome. If all calculations turn out to be correct, it will be the largest gold mine in the world, even bigger than the South Deep mine located in South Africa, with its 1,025 tons of gold. Everyone is worried. Everyone is happy. Gold, gold, gold on their minds. Everyone wants gold. Everyone buys gold. Gold is rising in price. Gold is more reliable than Bitcoin and cash. Gold is associated with wealth and luxury. Gold is always a valuable and profitable investment. But hold up. Why is it so? Why do people go crazy over some shiny metal? The fact is that gold has both practical and psychological value. For centuries, gold has represented power, prestige, and wealth in different cultures. It seems we're born in a genetic memory that gold is valuable. Think of how many problems gold has brought to literary heroes and how many gold-related adventures we've seen in movies. Gold makes people happy and greedy, cruel and intimidated. That's why so many people love it. Yes, it glitters, it's beautiful, but it's also practical. Gold doesn't rust, it doesn't corrode, it can be stored for a long time, and it doesn't deteriorate. It's literally a reliable investment. All other savings may lose value because of crises, but gold remains unchanged. The only problem, it can get stolen. In addition to jewelry making, gold is used in electronics, medicine, aerospace, and many other industries. Bitcoin has a value because of the public support of people around the world. Money has value thanks to the support of authorities. Gold has value on its own. It's tangible and visually appealing, and its worth is also supported by people's centuries-old belief in its enduring value. But never let gold cloud your mind. Many people lose their honor and even their minds over it. Avoid this trap. It's just a shiny piece of metal. There are other precious metals in the periodic table: palladium, silver, copper, platinum. Why is gold number 1? Cheaper metals such as copper, iron, lead, and aluminum corrode and rust. Aluminum is also not durable. Platinum and palladium are more expensive than gold, but they're too rare and difficult to mine. You won't make many coins out of them. Silver is softer than gold. It tarnishes, scratches, and deforms. And, well, to be honest, gold is more beautiful. But there is another reason why gold is so expensive. It's quite difficult to get. Gold mining is a very laborious and long process. In movies or documentaries, you might have seen people standing at the mouth of a river, collecting silt and clay, sifting it through gauze and small nets, and finding gold particles there. That's one of the methods for how gold is mined. You have to work hard to get just a few small pieces. How do they find gold? It used to be luck. someone was walking along the shore and saw something glistening in the water. But today, gold detection methods are much more effective. Geologists know that gold is present in almost all rocks and soil, but its particles are so tiny that they're not visible. But when the concentration of gold is high and noticeable, work begins to extract it. Special geological teams are engaged in searching for these sites. When they discover gold, they drill wells, then take soil samples and decide if there's enough metal to carry out large-scale mining. Production depends on the deposit. If gold is in hard rock, miners drill holes, place dynamite, and detonate it. The explosion breaks the rock into pieces so they can extract the gold. But this is just the beginning of the work. After collecting large pieces of rock, workers take them to factories to extract valuable material. At the first stage, specialists break large pieces of rock into smaller ones. Using crushing machines, they grind the ore into tiny pieces, similar to gravel. This gravel then enters rotating drums filled with steel balls. The drums spin, and the balls grind the gravel into powder under pressure. This mass is then mixed with water and passes through special filters. After that, gold is extracted from the ore using chemical solvents and complex purification systems. It adheres to carbon, then is separated from it, followed by several additional processes, including electrolysis and further purification. At the end, the gold is melted and separated from impurities, then poured into ingots and sent to other plants for further processing. Yes, it's a difficult and time-consuming process, and quite a long one. And it's not always profitable. You can find a deposit of precious metal, but it will be too expensive to extract it, and the amount of gold there won't be enough to make the effort worthwhile. Only 10% of the world's gold deposits contain enough precious material to pay back for its extraction and processing. There are many areas filled with gold. Do you know how many of them are suitable for productive mining? Less than 0.1%. So this is probably another reason why gold is so valuable. But is there any other material that causes a lot of excitement? Oh yes, this material is called liquid gold, and this is helium. That's the gas used to inflate balloons, but this is not its main value. Helium is capable of reaching ultra-low temperatures, is superconducting, and is lightweight. Helium is used in medicine for diagnostics. For example, for magnetic resonance imaging. Helium cools nuclear reactors and maintains rocket fuel temperatures during launch. Divers breathe a mixture of helium and oxygen during deep dives to avoid diseases associated with pressure changes. Helium is crucial for the modern world. Another precious material is graphene. It's not just one of the most durable materials in the world, it's a highly conductive material. Heat and electricity pass through graphene easily, which makes it very promising for the development of what? Considering that graphene is also flexible, water repellent, non-toxic, and has antibacterial properties, it's suitable for developing everything. Medical equipment, mechanical engineering, electronics, construction, logistics, energy conservation, space and underwater industries, and much more. Scientists believe that graphene has the potential to enable revolutionary new technologies that could change the lives of all people. Something similar happened with silicon, which is actively used to create semiconductors and rechargeable batteries. It's possible that without silicon, we wouldn't have smartphones, laptops, and other electronic devices. Graphene may also lead to a new technological leap. When the world switches to renewable sources of energy and uses electric transport, graphene can become technological gold. During tests, graphene batteries have shown that they charge more than 70 times faster than regular ones and last 3 times longer. At the same time, they're cheaper and environmentally friendly. Okay, that sounds cool, but where do we get this graphene? It's obtained from graphite, which lies in the bowels of the Earth. One of the largest graphite deposits is located in South Australia. 200 million tons of high-quality graphite. It sounds like it could be enough for the entire planet.
The Sahara Desert is like a Mad Max movie. Scorching heat, endless dunes, and an overall barren wasteland. place where no one could live, right? Well, forget all you know about it, because 5,000 years ago, the Sahara was a lush paradise of grasslands, lakes, and rivers, and the home of a ghost civilization that vanished without a trace. Our tale begins in the 1930s, when a Hungarian explorer stumbled upon a cave in the middle of the Sahara. Inside, he found something bizarre: ancient rock paintings of people swimming in a lake, surrounded by giraffes, hippos, and crocodiles. At the time, everybody shrugged it off as some symbolic depiction of the afterlife, because, really, who would imagine a lake in the Sahara? Well, fast forward some 70 years later, when a group of archaeologists made a discovery that flipped the script. In a rock shelter in Libya, they unearthed 15 mummies, along with baskets, ceramic pots, and other everyday items. This may look like prehistoric junk to most people, but to archaeologists, it was like uncovering a key piece of evidence. Those people weren't just passing through, they lived here. You see, those weren't just any mummies. They were some of the oldest naturally mummified humans ever found, dating back over 7,000 years. Take that, Egypt. 2 of them still had readable DNA, preserved thanks to a rare natural mummification process, almost a miracle considering the Sahara's climate's ability to turn everything into, well, beef jerky. Scientists struggled to understand where those mummies came from for a while, because the mitochondrial DNA they recovered was not helpful at all. But thanks to scientific progress, they eventually managed to do a full genome analysis that revealed some weird secrets. Those people belonged to a human lineage that was completely unknown, and they lived isolated from the rest of humanity for thousands of years. For decades, researchers assumed that the place where they lived, the Green Sahara, was like a prehistoric highway, a lush corridor that humans and animals used to migrate between sub-Saharan Africa and the Mediterranean. But the mummies demolished that theory, like a hippo sitting on a sandcastle. Their DNA showed zero genetic mixing with sub-Saharan and Eurasian migrants, keeping their genes pure for 7,000 years. Their closest genetic relatives weren't their neighbors living right below the famous desert, but some ancient hunter-gatherers from Morocco, and even some guys that lived in the Czech Republic, when it wasn't even a country yet, 50,000 years ago. We're not out of the woods yet, because those mummies also carried some teeny-tiny traces of Neanderthal DNA, just 10% of the amount found in modern Eurasians. Now, if you paid attention in school, then you know that Neanderthals lived in Europe and Asia, and early humans only mixed with them after migrating out of Africa. But those Green Sahara folks never left Africa. So how did they get Neanderthal genes? The leading theory is that their ancestors mingled with Neanderthals in North Africa 50,000 years ago before settling in the Sahara and cutting off contact with the outside world. Archaeologists also found cattle bones and tools made of stone and wood at that rock shelter, proving that those people led a thriving pastoral lifestyle. This discovery made scientists scratch their heads for a while because, you see, animal domestication was not developed in Africa. So how did they learn it if they never mingled with anyone? Did they have ancient YouTube tutorials? Probably not. The researchers believe they must have traded knowledge with neighboring groups, but just knowledge, no saliva. It's almost too hard to believe that no outsiders mixed with them. After all, who wouldn't want to live in a thriving civilization in the middle of a green paradise, drinking milk, eating meat, and even using animal blood as a protein source? Ooh, yummy. They didn't have to hunt for every meal, thanks to their livestock, and the abundant water made life pretty sweet. And yet, they never married outsiders. Why? Maybe it was a cultural choice to never date outside their own group. Or maybe the landscape itself kept them isolated. This is where scientists place their bets. They believe that the dense forests and rivers that existed in the Green Sahara acted like nature's no trespassing sign, creating a geographical barrier that isolates animals, plants, and whole societies. This isolation is the reason why their genes were so unique. These guys weren't swapping spit with anyone else. But this genetic time capsule almost didn't survive. For most of the last ice age, the Sahara was even harsher than today, a true dead zone where humans couldn't survive. 70,000 years ago, even the toughest people disappeared, retreating to the Nile Valley and the Mediterranean coast. Why? Because Earth was a climate bully. Massive glaciers stole all the moisture, weakening monsoons until rain clouds barely reached North Africa. Then came the knockout punches. Armadas of icebergs flooded the North Atlantic, triggering devastating droughts each time. This was the Sahara's ultimate keep-out era. Now, you're probably wondering how in the world the Sahara turned green after all this, and then went back to being a desert again. Well, it all started 15,000 years ago, I wasn't around then, when Earth was shaking off the last ice age. Our planet's axis was a bit wobbly, and because of that, the northern hemisphere got closer to the sun, getting extra sunlight and heat. This eternal summer turned North Africa into a giant moisture magnet, pulling water from the Atlantic and making it all rain down on the Sahara. The result of this ridiculous amount of rain was a lush savanna, complete with lakes the size of small countries. But the African humid period was not just a one-time miracle. The truth is, this eternal on and off switch between green and desert happened to the Sahara more than 230 times since the desert was born. During one of these events, the Sahara even expanded, getting bigger than it is today. So when the green Sahara showed up, you can bet it brought the ultimate ecosystem glow-up. This wasn't just a light dusting of grass. We're talking full makeover. The transformation was so complete, it even reshaped animal populations. Cheetahs suddenly struggled with the new prey dynamics, while rodents like the multi-mammate mouse thrived in the suddenly abundant grasslands. But don't pack your prehistoric swim trunks just yet. This paradise had teeth. The Sahara was an ecological maze of crocodile-infested rivers, malaria-carrying mosquitoes, and big cats lurking in the tall grass. Crossing it would have been like playing a real-life game of Hungry Hungry Hippos. This is probably why more groups didn't settle permanently. The Sahara's climate cycled between wet and dry every 20,000 years, hardly a stable zip code. For most ancient people, it was smarter to treat the green Sahara like an all-you-can-eat buffet, grab resources and leave before the desert returned. Still, this green Sahara period lasted for 10,000 years, giving our mystery shepherds plenty of time to thrive. But around 5,000 years ago, Earth's axis shifted again, the rains moved away, and the Sahara dried up faster than a puddle in July. As the desert returned, the shepherds from the green Sahara had no choice but to pack up their livestock and leave. Some researchers believe they migrated toward the Nile, laying the groundwork for ancient Egypt, so I guess their legacy lives on. Besides, their pure lineage may be extinct by now, but some faint genes of the mummies can still be found in the people that live in North Africa today. But the introvert mummies were not the only ones using the green Sahara as an Airbnb. They actually had neighbors just around the corner, in a lakeside village in Niger to be exact. Those people thrived for 5,000 years and left behind the oldest Sahara Desert cemetery, including a man buried in a turtle shell, a grinning Halloween man with filed teeth, and a heartbreaking family embrace frozen in time, victims of the very waters that sustained them. Eventually, those people disappeared too, just like it happened to our antisocial friends. This proves that this desert outsmarts everyone, with a landscape that gives paradise with one hand and takes it away with the other. Once upon a time, there was a lighthouse so tall that you could spot its beam from 30 miles away. A mysterious tower that was the symbol of wealth and engineering genius, made with stones so giant and heavy that it still makes us gasp. How did they do that? It has survived earthquakes, one after another, until it finally crumbled in the 14th century. Fast forward to today, and archaeologists have just hauled 22 of its colossal blocks off the seafloor. They're putting the tower back together, to be once again admired and explored, but not how you might imagine. The Lighthouse of Alexandria wasn't just a lighthouse, it was the lighthouse of ancient civilizations, one of the longest-standing world wonders. Built around 280 BCE on a tiny island called Pharos, it reached about 330 feet up in the sky. For comparison, that's taller than the Statue of Liberty or Big Ben. Now, keep in mind that this was before cranes, steel beams, or gym enthusiasts, and it becomes awe-inspiring. For sailors, spotting that gleaming tower was like finally seeing your exit sign after hours of driving on the world's most dangerous highway. The lighthouse was a sight for sore eyes because legend says the waters around Pharos were tricky, full of hidden reefs that could smash ships to pieces. Old sources claim it took about 12 years to build, with the price tag being around 800 Athenian talents of silver, which is an ancient unit of weight close to 57 pounds. That means someone had to haul chests holding 23 tons of coins, without a forklift, most likely across the sea. Wow! The lighthouse was so impressive that the word Pharos ended up being used for lighthouses in a bunch of different languages. The structure had a cool three-tier design. It was square at the bottom, octagonal in the middle, and cylindrical on top. On its top, it had a statue, most likely of Zeus or Poseidon. The lighthouse's white limestone exterior was polished with a sun-catching plaster, so it gleamed like a beacon even without fire. At night, things were different. Wood was hard to come by in Egypt, so the fire on top may have been fed with bundles of papyrus roots or even naphtha for a brighter flame. Whatever the fuel, its glow was boosted by a massive polished bronze mirror. Now, bronze mirrors were common back then. It wasn't until the Renaissance, way long after the Pharos had crumbled, that glass-coated mirrors became standard in European lighthouses. During the day, the same mirror could reflect sunlight, and the tower's bright white silhouette, along with the smoke curling up from the fire, would help sailors find their way. Alexandria was one of the biggest ports in the ancient world, filled with merchants, travelers, and messengers, and the lighthouse was its landmark. Now, fun fact, if you're a fan of the Song of Ice and Fire universe, it certainly popped into your mind when reading about the High Tower of Old Town. Some fans speculate that not just the fictional lighthouse, but also the city itself, was directly inspired by Alexandria. And George R.R. Martin's love for ancient wonders doesn't stop there. There's also the Titan of Bravos, and the beloved author confirmed the intentional parallel to the imposing Colossus of Rhodes. For over 1,600 years, the lighthouse stood high against time, storms, wars, and intrigues, just like in the Game of Thrones. But it was finally defeated by nature itself. Sadly, a few major earthquakes during the 14th century brought it down, scattering its massive stones across the seabed. For over 5 centuries, the remains of the lighthouse just sat there under the waves, basically turning into an underwater rock garden. Divers knew about them, but hauling up 60-ton blocks from the sea is a job for a superhero, or a super powerful crane. And, until recently, it was a lot safer to leave them where they were. Alexandria is still, to this day, a busy harbor, and isn't exactly the easiest place for delicate archaeology. In the 1990s, archaeologists started mapping the whole area around Pharos Island. What they found was precision-cut limestone and granite blocks, some still showing carved edges. Over time, more than 100 massive pieces were cataloged, including chunks of columns, statues, and giant building blocks that could only have come from the lighthouse. Finally, in 2025, Egyptian and French teams joined up and brought that super crane along with a team of divers. In a carefully planned operation, they brought up 22 giant slabs from the seabed. There were parts like door lintels, threshold slabs, and a mysterious pylon, speculated to be some kind of monument. Some of those blocks weigh 70 to 80 tons, which is the weight of 20 African elephants. Those giant boulders are on dry land for the first time in over 600 years. But what happens now? Are researchers really about to rebuild the lighthouse like a giant Lego set? Not quite. You can't just stack century-old blocks like that. For starters, no one's 100% sure what the Lighthouse of Alexandria really looked like. Yeah, we've got drawings and clues, most famously, the tiny images stamped into Roman coins from Alexandria. But they're more like an artist's quick sketch, not quite the blueprints for recreating something down to the last detail. And then there's the missing pieces problem. Those recovered stones are just a fraction of the original structure. Over the centuries, much of the lighthouse's material was repurposed. In fact, the spot where the lighthouse used to stand is now home to the citadel of Qaitbay, a fortress built right on its old foundations. The fort is not just a symbol of the past, but also a tourist attraction and a recognizable Alexandrian landmark. So, no, Alexandria isn't about to get its legendary tower back. At least not in that way. Instead, these newly recovered stoneworks are headed for conservation labs to be studied. Specialists will clean, stabilize, and document every carved groove and chisel mark. Later, they're likely to head to a museum. After all, it's part of the national treasure. However, that's not the end of the story. We still have the technology on our side that promises a fully recreated and explorable lighthouse, just like it was all those centuries ago. The entire endeavor is called the Pharos Project, and its mission is to turn those hauled massive stones, lintels, thresholds, base slabs, and even a mystery pylon into a complete walk-through digital twin of the Lighthouse of Alexandria. Each piece is getting high-resolution 3D scanning, joining more than 100 fragments already recorded underwater. The goal isn't just a research. The Pharos Project aims to bring back the lighthouse's original look and feel and turn it into a museum. 330-foot-tall structures often have a lot of stairs, and virtual reality is going to be far less painful for my old feet. Museum visitors could walk around its base in augmented reality, while researchers could use the model to test new theories about its structure and function. Hopefully, we'll be able to customize our own atmosphere, dim the lights, and examine the walls just like in a video game. Maybe they'll render pigeons and seagulls to make it even more authentic. We still don't have many details, but the entire thing is being recorded and will be made into a documentary. While we don't have booths to time travel, talented designers can bring the past back to the present. They just need the correct concept art. Sure, nowadays you can recreate almost everything in 3D, but the point here is the authenticity, to put it back together exactly how it was. This is what the Project Pharos wants to achieve. Maybe one day, every ancient world wonder will end up being recreated in a similar way. But there's no reason to stop there. Virtual tourism can save time and money, and while nothing can replace the real experience, visiting authentic locations recreated in virtual reality may be the next best option. Locals are already excited. The citadel of Qaitbay is already drawing people, but now Alexandria is about to get the first digital tourist attraction. Soon anyone with a VR headset can stand on top of this historic wonder, squint while watching the sunset, and finally answer the burning question: is it possible to get exhausted while climbing virtual stairs? And can I customize the soundtrack? Ooh. There you are, trekking across a desert on foot. It's hot, you're terribly thirsty, and now you gotta walk around this stupid wall. Wait, a wall in the middle of a sandy, lifeless nowhere? Exactly, a wall in the northern Saudi desert. Archaeologists have just made a super exciting discovery, and what they found was not just a single wall. No, it was a whole ancient walled city that might date back to 2400 BCE. They think this place was home to around 500 people and could have been used for 1,000 years. This discovery is groundbreaking. It means that the area could have been way more advanced than anyone expected. This city was well organized, with different zones for living, towers and strong walls for protection, and different sections for all kinds of daily life. This ancient city, now called Al-Natab, was basically an oasis town, and it's great since it can give us a peek into what life might have been like in this desert thousands of years ago. Apparently, they had clearly separated areas, like residential sections, a cemetery, farmland, and even a town center. This oasis city, found in the Khaybar area, is the first big organized settlement from the 2nd or 3rd millennium BCE that researchers have uncovered in northwestern Arabia. The first surveys show that this town, which covered about 6 acres, had several districts, including the residential area, the cemetery, and the legal one, with courts. The houses were set up in neat rows, all connected by small roads. Those streets kept the residential area separate from the rest of the town. Back then, most people in this region were nomadic herders, always moving around. But archaeologists have been sure that during the Bronze Age, northwest Arabia had small walled towns and oasis centers scattered across it. These connected oasis towns were unique, offering secure places for people to live, store goods, and trade. They started showing the beginnings of urban planning, which hints that people of that time were already starting to settle down and organize communities more seriously. The research team estimated that there were about 50 homes in Al-Natab, but that number could go up to 70 as they keep digging. They think that a few hundred people lived there, and probably one of the coolest things is that some houses went up to 3 stories tall. Built on a slope near a couple of major trade routes, this city was set up in a prime spot. Now, one of the most impressive things about this place is its water supply. The oasis had springs and aquifers, which are underground water sources, and such conditions were perfect for farming. Those water sources meant residents could grow their own food, making the town self-sufficient. The outer walls probably helped control who could enter the town and get access to its resources. This settled way of life was an impressive shift from nomadic living to a more agro-pastoral lifestyle, which means a mix of farming and herding animals. Another find that supports this theory is a bunch of tools like grinding stones, mortars, and pestles discovered inside the town. People there must have ground grains and prepared food. They had a diet of cereals, meat, and milk from animals they raised themselves. These astonishing findings show that the inhabitants of the town could easily feed themselves and were surprisingly advanced for that time. Thanks to better access to Saudi Arabia in the past couple of decades, archaeologists now have a much clearer picture of what life there was like thousands of years ago. The most exciting thing is that Al-Natab might have been part of a whole network of similar fortified oasis towns spread across the region, and all of these connected sites could show us how trade routes and small settlements worked together at that time in that arid area. Now, at the same time, this recent discovery isn't the only one that has the scientific world buzzing with excitement. How about we visit Egypt and see for ourselves? After all, archaeologists have just found a stash of ancient Egyptian and Greek treasure underwater. They were exploring the lost city of Thonis Heraklion off the coast of Egypt, which sank more than 1,000 years ago. This city was legendary, and nobody even knew where it was until it was rediscovered in 2000. Now they're uncovering more and more, and on this dive, they found a pile of gold and silver treasures. Those were probably used in rituals to bless Egyptian pharaohs when they took the throne. The researchers even found an ancient Greek temple dedicated to Aphrodite and some super old Greek weapons. Frank Gaudio, the lead archaeologist, said it was astonishing that those delicate objects had survived the disaster that brought the city down. Back in its prime, Thonis Heraklion was one of the biggest port cities in the Mediterranean. It was a huge center of social life and was the main entry point for ships from Greece coming into Egypt. But tragically, due to rising waters, earthquakes, and a catastrophic tidal wave, the soil underneath the city literally turned into mush, and then the entire city sank into the Mediterranean. It was forgotten until Gaudio's team found it in 2000. Since then, they've been uncovering new parts of the city and piecing together its history little by little. If a lost underwater city doesn't seem impressive enough, we can travel to the Amazon. The discovery made there is truly mind-boggling. For centuries, people have talked about lost cities deep in the Amazon, like El Dorado, that mythical city of gold that lured Spanish explorers into the jungle. A lot of them never came back. Then, in the 1900s, a British explorer named Percy Fawcett went searching for what he called the lost city of Z, and he too disappeared. But now, finally, scientists have actually found proof that those lost cities in the Amazon were real all along. A team of scientists use a tech called LiDAR, which basically allows you to see through thick jungle from above by bouncing light beams off the ground. They flew over the jungle in Bolivia in a helicopter about 650 feet up and mapped out those hidden ancient cities. What they found were ruins of a huge urban settlement built by the Kasarabi people who lived there from 500 to 1400 CE. And it wasn't just a couple of buildings here and there. No, the LiDAR maps revealed massive urban centers, pyramids, platforms, roads, canals, and causeways, all carefully laid out. Turns out the Amazon wasn't just an untouched jungle. It was once home to big, complex cities. A scientist from the German Archaeological Institute explained that Europeans had long ignored the possibility of ancient Amazonian cities, but the LiDAR maps showed they were wrong. The new maps have revealed 26 sites, including 11 that no one even knew existed. Researchers have discovered two main city sites, Landivar and Kotoka. They had massive moat causeways stretching out like spokes on a wheel, linking the main cities with smaller surrounding settlements. Some of the canals even connected the cities to rivers and a big lake, which allowed water to flow through the area. Over the years, scientists found scattered ruins all over this region, but the thick jungle made it nearly impossible to connect the dots and see if or how they were related. With LiDAR, the whole layout came to life, showing that those sites were part of a much larger organized urban system. It's now also clear that the sites had a greater meaning, since everything is lined up in a way that could be symbolic of the spiritual beliefs of the inhabitants. The Kasarabi culture isn't as famous as the Maya, but they had a thriving society in an area that faced huge challenges, like yearly flooding. And although the nearby Andes had their own monumental sites, the Kasarabi were doing something absolutely unique. They even had reservoirs to store water, which suggests they might have been dealing with occasional droughts, which is pretty unusual for the Amazon. Actually, those terrible droughts could be why the Kasarabi eventually left their cities around 1400 CE. Hey, I bet you didn't know that trees used to grow in the middle of Egypt's barren, sun-roasted Sinai desert. It's true. If you can't picture it, I don't blame you. But archaeologists have recently stumbled upon a tree-lined boulevard. Yep, an actual green avenue leading to a massive ancient fortress. No, this isn't some mirage or an overactive imagination, although I do have one. But it's turning our ideas of ancient Egyptian desert life upside down. Let's rewind a bit. The site in question is called Tel Abu Saifi, located in the northern part of the Sinai Peninsula. For a long time, it was known as a dusty archaeological footnote, the home of ruins from the Ptolemaic and Roman periods. You know, the era after Alexander the Great swaggered through Egypt and the Roman Empire called dibs. But recently, Egypt's Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities decided to give it a fresh dig. And what they found out turned to be more than just a forgotten outpost. We're talking about a full-on military fortress with defensive trenches, paved roads, lime kilns, barracks for soldiers, and even room for their families. A whole bunch of living quarters right in the middle of a desert doesn't feel very homey until you remember our star, the unexpected Green Avenue. This road was over 300 feet long and 36 feet wide, as long as an American football field, paved with limestone slabs and lined with more than 500 clay planting pits. These weren't for show, they held actual trees, creating a shaded tree-line entrance straight to the fortress. Imagine walking through that, the sun blazing overhead, and suddenly, blessed shade. Ooh. Now, that's not just a grand entrance, that's an ancient red carpet, or maybe a green one. But this wasn't about curb appeal. The existence of hundreds of trees in a desert landscape over 2,000 years ago tells us something big. You see, the Ptolemaic Egyptians weren't simply good at building monuments, they were also masters of water management. In a place where rainfall is rarer than a selfie with a pharaoh, they somehow found a way to grow rows of trees. Now, let that sink in. To irrigate that many trees in a desert, they must have had a sophisticated irrigation or water transport system, something capable of moving and distributing water efficiently in this harsh climate. Maybe they channeled groundwater, or maybe they captured seasonal rain, or maybe ancient sprinkler systems. Okay, maybe not that fancy. But still, it's clear they were ahead of their time. Here's the thing, we already know the Egyptians mastered water control. They harnessed the Nile with ditches and canals to feed distant fields. So irrigation wasn't exactly a mystery to them. They had the skills and the knowledge. And sure, scientists still debate what the Sinai climate was like 2,000 years ago, but many believe it may have once been greener. After all, take one look at those dramatic mountains and rocky landscapes, shaped and sculpted as if by brute force of ancient rivers. And it's hard not to think that water once played a bigger role out there. Plus, archaeologists have found tons of evidence showing that Ptolemaic Egyptians cultivated fruits, vines, and trees on a large scale. In other words, growing a forest in a desert might feel wild to us, but to them, it was just another Tuesday. And now, this green avenue is making archaeologists wonder, what if similar irrigation systems were used elsewhere, say for transporting the enormous stones used to build the pyramids? There's already a theory that ancient rivers or human-made canals helped move those stones. And the Tel Abu Saifi discovery? Well, it might just be the missing puzzle piece. This isn't just a dream. Back then, rivers were like highways, power grids, and cargo trains of the ancient world, all rolled into one. Egyptians used them for everything: irrigating crops, trading goods, powering industry, and even mobilizing for war. If you were doing something important, odds are it involved a river. But wait, it gets even better. Excavations revealed deep defensive trenches, like ancient moats, dug more than 6 feet deep around the fortress. Those weren't just muddy ditches. They were part of an elaborate defense system designed to be filled or bridged to control access. Think of it as ancient Egypt's version of a retractable security gate, minus the hydraulics. And while the trenches were keeping intruders out, life inside the fortress was bustling. Remember how we said archaeologists had found military housing units? It turns out soldiers might have lived there with their families. So this wasn't just a barracks, it was a thriving community, with meals, routines, kids playing, and probably a whole lot of ancient gossip flying around the dinner table. In addition to all the military stuff, researchers found 4 massive lime kilns used to produce quicklime, an essential ingredient for making construction mortar. These kilns are a big deal because they suggest that during the later Roman period, Tel Abu Saifi turned into an industrial hub. It was like the Home Depot of ancient Egypt, churning out materials to build and repair buildings. But here's where the plot thickens. Underneath all of this, beneath the roads, the trenches, the kilns, archaeologists found the corners of an even older structure, a mystery building. Could it be the remains of a third, much older fortress? Or an ancient cemetery or lost city? Nobody knows yet, but one thing's clear: this story isn't over. Honestly, this might be the coolest archaeological cliffhanger of the decade. So, what does this all mean? Well, for starters, it challenges everything we assumed about desert life in ancient Egypt. For the longest time, deserts were thought of as natural barriers, dry, deadly, and empty. But this find suggests that the desert might have once been green and full of life, not because the climate was dramatically different, but because the Egyptians were incredibly good at bending the environment to their will. They didn't just survive in the desert, they transformed it. It also adds fuel to the fire in the age-old debate about ancient Egyptian tech. If they could build a fortress with tree-lined roads, moats, irrigation, and industry in the middle of the Sinai, is it really such a stretch to imagine they could engineer water channels to move pyramid stones? Forget the Ancient Aliens TV show. Sure, it's entertaining, I'll give you that, but it makes us forget something crucial. Those people were brilliant. A lot of what we call modern technology is recycled ancient ingenuity. And who knows how much knowledge we've lost over time. Meanwhile, the dig continues. Scientists are now mapping the entire Tel Abu Saifi site, trying to piece together how all the structures connect. Some want to analyze soil samples to find traces of old tree roots and maybe even figure out what kinds of trees once grew there. Imagine if they were date palms. We might be looking at the world's oldest snack lane. You already know that the implications of the discoveries don't stop with history books, right? This kind of discovery has modern relevance too. Our world is going through a lot of change, with crazy weather and huge heat waves. So maybe we should be asking, what can we learn from ancient civilizations that once made the desert bloom? If nothing else, Tel Abu Saifi reminds us that the ancient Egyptians were more than just pharaohs, pyramids, and mummies. They were visionary planners, eco-architects, and straight-up problem solvers. They didn't wait for nature to hand them what they needed. They engineered it. And thanks to discoveries like this, we're getting a clearer picture of just how advanced and, frankly, how cool ancient Egyptian civilization really was. So next time someone tells you deserts are just empty wastelands, you can hit them with this fun fact. Over 2,000 years ago, in the heart of the Sinai Desert, there was a fortress with a tree-lined avenue, moats, military housing, an industrial center, and even a secret underground structure. Take that, sand dunes! Who knows what else is still buried out there, waiting to rewrite history?
A Portuguese archaeologist just discovered a bunch of sunken ships filled with gold, including a Spanish galleon with 22 tons of gold and silver. This much gold today is worth about $2 billion, and this is the money from one ship alone. Archaeologist Alexandre Monteiro made this discovery almost by accident. He was studying some documents when he found some information about a ship that went missing in 1615, and he decided he wanted to find it. After many years, Alexandre found not just this specific ship, he actually discovered 8,620 shipwrecks in the waters of Portugal alone. Out of this number, 250 are gold-filled shipwrecks, a discovery that would make any Jack Sparrow shake in his boots. Most of these ships went down for boring reasons like the weather, but sometimes they were destroyed in battles, which may or may not have been super epic. They were carrying gold and other treasures from the New World to Europe, and of course, everyone wanted a share. Alexandre had been studying historical shipwrecks for 30 years now, so he has discovered many ships that went down in somewhat glorious ways. In 1816, for example, a ship of one of the richest men in Portugal sank in Australia, with an insane amount of 66,000 silver coins. This was the first ship from Portugal to ever plunge in the waters of Australia. The bad news is that these ancient sunken vessels, filled with riches and epic stories, are not so easy to reach. They're deep down in the ocean and covered by sand. You could still try, but that would be stealing part of a country's history, and you wouldn't want to be that person, would you? Naturally, Portugal was not the only country that explored the seas back then. The coast of Europe is packed with sunken ships filled with gold. In fact, there are about 1 million historical shipwrecks underwater right now, and the treasures abandoned under the sea might be worth around $60 billion. It's an insane amount of money, but let me tell you that these gold-filled sunken ships aren't really worth the hassle. There are many stories of maritime treasure discoveries that turned into insane lawsuits and even long jail time. Our first story starts in 1746, when a violent storm crashed a ship called Prince de Conti near an island in Brittany. The ship was filled with tea, ceramics, and 100 gold ingots. Of course, the owners of the ship tried to save the loot, but if it's not easy now, imagine how it was back in the 18th century. It took more than 200 years for the vessel to be found. It finally happened in 1975, when a group of French men discovered it and decided to take pretty much every valuable thing they could find. Now, I said these things were not worth the trouble for a reason. In France, if you find anything that can be historical, you must declare it to the local authorities within 48 hours. Fail to comply, and you will be committing something known as a crime. To be fair, our French friends here did declare their findings, but only the corroded cannons from the ship. And the gold? Well, they sold it. Obviously, because each gold bar is worth between $125,000 to $231,000. It took French authorities almost 50 years to retrieve the stolen gold, and they didn't retrieve all of it. Part of it was bought by an elderly couple living in Florida, and the crime is so serious they were charged for connection with money laundering, organized crime, and the trafficking of cultural goods. The poachers also sold some gold ingots to the British Museum collection. Now, let's go back to the 1850s, when a steamer called SS Central America traveled from Panama to California and back again. This was during the Californian Gold Rush, a time when 300,000 people moved to California to dig for gold. Because the travel route was not easy breezy, people needed to carry their gold around on big ships. This is where our friend SS Central America comes in. In 1857, the ship had 578 people on board and about 10 tons of gold. Very few survived, and around $100 to $150 million in gold went down with the ship. All of this explains why in 1988, a group of investors from Columbus decided to finance a research project to find this ship. The research was led by a guy named Tommy Thompson. Tommy was really crazy about the idea of finding this sunken ship filled with gold. It took him years to find the exact location of the SS Central America, especially because the ship was 7,500 feet beneath the surface of the Atlantic Ocean, and retrieving it required a lot of fancy tech. A group of 161 investors paid for his adventure, but it goes without saying that they were not doing this out of love from their hearts. They invested $12.5 million in this project because they were expecting to earn at least 10 times more. But since life is not all sunshine and rainbows, 39 insurance companies sued the research team as soon as they retrieved the gold. Back when the ship was up and running, these companies insured the cargo of the SS Central America, and when the cargo was finally retrieved, more than 100 years later, they wanted to be compensated. They said it was not their job to retrieve it, but that doesn't mean they abandoned it. This crazy talk didn't stick, and 92% of the gold was given to the research team. The plot thickened when the investors were scammed by none other than Tommy Thompson, who fled with $4.16 million. He also had 500 gold coins, but he's not telling a soul where they are. Nonsense like this is the reason why most countries have rules to protect cultural properties. And yes, sometimes shipwrecks can be a cultural property. Obviously, there are many maritime treasure discoveries that happen without breaking any laws. The SS City of Cairo, for example, was a steamship that submerged in 1929 with 2,000 boxes of silver coins weighing 122 tons. A company called Deep Ocean Search retrieved the coins from a depth of 17,000 feet, which is 4,500 feet lower than the Titanic. 34 million pounds went to the UK Treasury, and the Deep Ocean Search also got a share. The good news here is that some of the coins can be bought by collectors, legally. Paying for a treasure is probably the closest you can get to an underwater archaeology find. I know, all I did was destroy your piracy dreams. But while raiding gold-filled shipwrecks may be a crime in most countries, or just financially impossible for us mere mortals, not all hope is lost. There is about $771 trillion worth of gold lying on the ocean floor, and it doesn't have an owner. It's like an underwater gold mine, except the gold is in the water. You know how the water of the ocean is salty? Well, the gold gets mixed with the minerals in the water, so it's not like you stumble upon a gold nugget on the beach. Each liter of ocean water has 13 billionths of a gram of gold, and it's very difficult to extract such tiny particles of gold from the water. But that doesn't mean people haven't tried, and of course, there's been a scam here too. In the 1890s, a guy claimed he had invented a thing that would suck gold from the seawater. When he got enough money, he fled the country with the cash. If you really want to get some gold, you could try to extract it from the Earth's core, which has 1.6 quadrillion tons of gold. There's 16 times more gold in the Earth's core than what humans have mined in the whole of history. No hoax involved here because nobody has dared to go down there yet. With archaeologists discovering gold-filled sunken ships out and about, maybe we can make our own maritime treasure discoveries, or at least save enough money to buy some silver coins. This is a real human brain. Well, it was, until a hot cloud of ash turned it into glass. This crazy transformation happened almost 2,000 years ago, when Mount Vesuvius decided it was a good day to erupt and destroy cities like Pompeii, Atlantis, and Herculaneum. This particular brain belonged to a young man who lived in 79 CE in Herculaneum. Not the most famous Roman town, but it was the first place that was discovered under Vesuvius's ashes way back in 1709. Around 200 years later, archaeologists found the remains of this young man lying face down on a bed. All the smoke and ash probably made him disoriented, so while most of the citizens of Herculaneum rushed to the shore, hoping to be rescued, the brain guy ended up trapped inside a building and passed out. Weirdly enough, this saved his brain from completely disappearing. How in the world does a brain turn into glass? Well, when Mount Vesuvius erupted, it didn't expel just lava. It also sent away a really hot cloud of ash before the solidified lava could flow down. This type of lava, known as pyroclastic flow, could get as hot as 869 degrees Fahrenheit, an insane temperature, we know. Hot enough to melt your brain, but not hot enough to turn it into glass. The cloud of ash, however, can reach temperatures between 932 degrees Fahrenheit to 1,112 degrees Fahrenheit. But to turn something into glass, you don't just need heat, you need rapid cooling too. To put it simply, you have to heat something to a very high temperature until it melts into a liquid. If you let it cool down slowly, the molecules of this liquid will start to calmly organize themselves in the shape of crystals. But if this something cools down super fast, it will solidify in whatever shape the liquid was. It's like making ice cubes. If you pour water into a tray and stick it in the freezer, it will turn into ice because it cools down quickly. But if you leave the water out at room temperature, it'll just evaporate. This means that the brain melted due to a really high temperature, but before it could crystallize, for example, or just boil away, it got really cold. The flow from the eruption was not hot enough for this to happen, but the cloud of ash that reached town before the pyroclastic flow was hot enough to start this process, and fast enough to leave just at the right time. To figure out the exact temperature needed for this brain-to-glass transformation, scientists used a technique called differential scanning calorimetry. This fancy name basically means that they heat up glass shards to see when they start to change shape. They discovered that the cloud of ash had to be exactly 950 degrees Fahrenheit hot for the brain cells to start melting. Now, remember how I said this guy was inside a building, but most of the citizens were outside? Well, those people were also exposed to this drastic change in temperature, but they didn't turn into glass because they were not being protected by the walls of a building. The protection provided by the skull surely helped our guy, but it was not enough. And since other people didn't have the same protection, their brains basically poofed. And before you ask, no other parts of his body turned into glass. You see, you need some liquid for the glass-making process to happen. The brain has a lot of water and fat, which makes it a prime candidate for the glassification process. Yes, I've just made that word up. Other organs might have contained liquid, but they weren't as protected as the brain, so they were destroyed by the heat. And bones? Well, bones don't have enough liquid, so they just remained the same. The ones that didn't char, anyway. When the brain turned into glass, it looked a lot like an obsidian stone, a type of volcanic glass formed by the cool lava of a volcano. Even the forensic archaeologist who discovered this glassified brain thought it was just a stone at first. He was studying the bones of our hero when he noticed something shining inside of his skull, right in the middle of all the volcanic ash that filled it. To his surprise, this thing was way more fragile than obsidian and smaller too, with some fragments being only a few millimeters large. He only figured this was part of that guy's brain after he took the glass to the lab. With the help of a microscope, he discovered that this was not a stone but an organic tissue, which is basically cells that form our organs. This organic tissue was made by protein, a molecule produced by living things like animals and plants. And this was not just any protein. This one was specific to the human brain because every organ is made of different types of protein. The researchers also found nerve cells preserved inside this glass, complete with the tendrils that help them receive and send messages. The microscope also showed what was left of myelin, a fatty substance that gives a speed boost to the messages traveling along the nerves. This isn't the first time scientists discovered preserved human brains. In fact, more than 4,000 brains have been found since the 17th century. It may not look like a big number, but keep in mind that finding only the brain preserved in a skeleton while the other organs are gone is not that common. You see, the human brain is actually the first thing that decomposes when we're 6 feet under, and it usually turns into liquid. When scientists stumble upon a human brain, it's usually dried, frozen, or literally turned into soap. A brain can be dehydrated if a person perishes in a place that is very hot, like a desert. Frozen brains are found, obviously, in places that are super cold, like polar tundras. A brain turned into soap may sound weird, but the saponification process is not that rare. You need a lot of fat and oils to make soap, and the human brain is filled with this. It's a complex process, but if you find a brain that turned into soap, it must have been buried in a place that is very wet and has little oxygen. Back in 1982, for example, construction workers found dozens of human skeletons in a pond in Florida. They were all 8,000 years old, and 91 of them actually had their brains still somewhat intact. And by intact, I mean they turned into jelly soap. During the 2000s, the brains of 45 people were found in Spain, preserved because of this saponification process. This discovery helped researchers understand the chemical composition of the brains and even the weather conditions of the moment when these people passed away. Scientists also discovered two 3,700-year-old brains in Turkey that belonged to a middle-aged man and a teenager that were trying to escape an attack on their city. This time, the brains turned into charcoal because of a super hot fire. And even though their skulls preserved the brains in this state, the heating and cooling process was probably not intense enough to glassify them. But this? It's the first time in history that scientists have found a brain that naturally turned into glass. It's like finding a unicorn, but in a more scientific way. So what does this discovery mean? Well, for starters, it gives us a glimpse into the lives of those who existed such a long time ago. Secondly, it taught scientists an amazing way to preserve the human brain. It also shows just how powerful nature can be. Powerful enough to turn a brain into glass, but delicate enough to preserve it for thousands of years. So, let's give a shout out to the young man who unknowingly contributed to science. He probably had no idea that his brain would one day be the star of a groundbreaking discovery. His tragic end has given us a fascinating peek into the past.
Now, this bad boy was the size of a husky and could maybe pass for one, except it didn't have any fur and was a top predator with extra long, blade-like canine teeth. Ooh, charming. Meet the earliest known saber-toothed animal to have ever lived. It roamed the Earth well before the dinosaurs. Scientists made the description of this creature based on its fossils found on the Spanish island of Majorca in the Mediterranean Sea. About 200 million years ago, none of us were around then, the very first true mammals appeared, and they lived right alongside the dinosaurs. But if we trace the family tree of mammals even further back, we'll find an ancient group called Therapsids. They didn't look like mammals we have today, but they had some key features that would eventually help define mammals. For example, Therapsids had special openings on the sides of their skulls for jaw muscles, and parts of their jaw bones would later evolve into the tiny middle ear bones that all mammals, including you, have today. So, the new discovery is what might be the oldest known Therapsid fossil. The fossil, which doesn't have an official species name yet, belongs to a group called Gorgonopsians. Those guys are more closely related to mammals than they are to any other living animals. Some of them were as small as cats, and others were as massive as polar bears. Gorgonopsians had some very mammal-like traits, like different types of teeth for different jobs. But unlike mammals, these ancient predators kept replacing their teeth, even their giant saber-like canines, over and over during their lives. Hey, that would be handy. Until now, the oldest Gorgonopsian fossils we knew about were around 265 million years old. But this new fossil is even older, dating back between 270 and 280 million years. The find was super detailed and complete, including its sharp knife-like fangs, part of its jaw, pieces of its spine, ribs, tailbones, and toe bones, plus most of one of its back legs. Even though the creature's skull wasn't complete, the scientists think it was about 7 inches long, and the animal itself would have been around the size of a medium-large dog, weighing between 66 and 88 pounds. But other than that, it didn't really look much like a dog. Even though it had some lizard-like features, calling it a lizard dog is totally wrong. Mammals and reptiles do share a super ancient ancestor from about 320 million years ago, but their evolutionary paths split a long time ago. When the newly found creature was alive, the island of Majorca was right in the middle of the gigantic supercontinent Pangaea. Back then, this area went through super wet and super dry seasons. Scientists have always wondered if major moments in mammal history happened in tropical places like this, but we just didn't have the right fossils to prove it. Now, with the discovery of the oldest known Gorgonopsian in Majorca, the missing pieces of the puzzle are coming together. It looks like some huge steps in mammal evolution could have happened in low-latitude environments we haven't explored much yet. The so-called gap in the fossil record might just be because paleontologists weren't looking in the right spots. Our hero of the day wasn't the only cool guy rocking the planet before dinos settled in. Over 500 million years ago, the weirdest predators to have ever existed ruled the oceans. The name is a bit tricky to pronounce, so I'm not going to. Okay, it's Anomalocaris, but it just literally means unusual shrimp. This creature looked nothing like anything alive today. Scientists think it was the first true apex predator, the orca of its time. Anomalocaris was massive for its era, as it grew up to 3 feet from its sharp grabbing arms to the tips of its tail fins. For a while, everyone thought trilobites were its go-to meal, but new research shows it wasn't strong enough to crack open trilobite armor. So instead, it was a speedy, agile hunter with awesome vision, and it often picked off soft-body animals that zipped through the open water. Now, another really cool creature from pre-dino times is a fish that could walk on land. Tiktaalik lived in marshy rivers that looked a lot like today's Amazon rainforest. It could grow up to 9 feet long, and it found its prey in rivers and inlets like a modern-day freshwater crocodile. It had a flexible neck and even some early versions of lungs, and thanks to them, it could survive both in water and out of it. Why fish like Tiktaalik started moving toward land about 395 million years ago is still a bit of a mystery. Around that time, the ancient supercontinent called Gondwana was drifting closer to the land that would become North America. This slow movement created lots of shallow, swampy habitats, which were perfect places for crocodile-like animals to thrive. Plus, these areas were near the equator, so they were warm and tropical. But there wasn't a lot of food waiting for them on land, so maybe they moved there for safety reasons. There were fewer predators and better spots to lay eggs there compared to the water. Creatures first adapted to living in open water, then shallow water, then marshes and river edges, and only after a long, slow transition did they finally step fully onto land. Now, how about a millipede the size of a small car and weighing as much as a large dog? This beauty lived over 300 million years ago in what is now England. Back then, during the Carboniferous period, Earth's atmosphere had way more oxygen, over 26%, compared to today's 21%. Scientists used to think the high oxygen levels were the only reason these creatures could get so big. But back then, they found a new fossil from a time when oxygen wasn't that much higher than today. They discovered it purely by accident, when a boulder split just right and revealed one of the most complete and largest giant millipede specimens ever. This one could have lived not just in swampy areas, but also in open woodlands filled with tasty seeds, nuts, and maybe even small animals. There's a chance that this beast wasn't a slow, plant-munching crawler, but a predator that would snap up whatever it could find. After dominating the Earth for about 45 million years, the giant millipedes eventually vanished. Probably the reptiles pushed them out, clearing the way for the age of the dinosaurs. Now, in case you ever wondered what would happen if you crossed a polar bear with a saber-toothed cat, here's the answer. This guy ruled the southern ecosystems after migrating 7,000 miles across the supercontinent Pangaea around 252 million years ago. It had a tough skin like a rhino's and massive canines, perfect for tearing away huge chunks of meat, and it was an excellent runner. Once it got to its new home in what is now South Africa, it replaced a whole group of local predators. But its glory didn't last long, as closer to the end of the Permian period, massive volcanic eruptions made the weather patterns change and wiped out about 90% of all species. And because top predators are usually big, slow to grow, and not super common, they often vanish among the first when massive extinction events hit. And that's how our guy here went extinct. Our final creature of the day was a dragonfly that lived around 300 million years ago and had a wingspan of over 2 feet, 6 long, spiny legs, and huge, bulging eyes. Meganjura. This 4-winged giant is most likely the largest flying insect that ever lived, and it easily outsizes today's dragonflies, which are its distant relatives. Like modern dragonflies, Meganjura like to hang out in open areas near ponds and slow-moving streams. But unlike today's dragonflies, it wasn't just catching tiny bugs. This guy was likely the top predator in these open spaces. It used the spines on its legs like a flying trap to snatch prey out of the air, including other flying insects, small amphibians, and even lizard-like creatures. Scientists found the first fossils of Meganjura in 1880 in the coal-rich rocks in France. The fossils were incredibly well preserved and showed off the detailed vein patterns in their wings. Scientists think Meganjura grew so huge because it didn't have much competition from vertebrates, and the air back then, during the Carboniferous period, had a lot more oxygen than it does today.
A girl, once and beautiful, ended up in a grave with a huge sickle across her neck. There were no signs of violence, no indications of any actual crime. Yet, someone was clearly terrified when they forced her into that grave. So scared that they even placed a padlock on the big toe of her left foot. They wanted her to stay in the tomb once and for all, fearing she might rise and take revenge on them. So, a whole community turned against a young lady who wasn't even over 20 years old, deeming her to be of ultimate danger. Do you see what I'm driving at? Let's test your historical knowledge. Who has been feared throughout human history to such an extent that commoners couldn't shake off that lingering sense of dread, even after their passing? If you say witches, warlocks, and vampires, you'd be completely correct. Just a little hint here. If you can't overpower someone physically, you can do it supernaturally. Well, that's at least what people used to think back in the 17th century. Not only was there a sickle and a padlock, but there were also signs of an attempt to twist the girl's corpse in the grave and turn it face down. This attempt had failed, leaving her spine buckled and twisted. By the way, the padlock wasn't necessarily meant to lock a vampire. It was more likely a talisman against evil spirits. That's a peculiar and, let's face it, very cruel way to bury someone. Yet it was a common practice for creating anti-vampire burial sites. The methods for preventing vampires from rising were quite elaborate. First off, let me introduce a term. Anti-vampire graves, known as revenant graves, date back thousands of years and have been found in various locations across Europe. Europe, you heard that right. Now before you say, hey, vampires are a Romanian thing, Dracula, duh, let me convince you otherwise. They are a part of all European folklore, meaning you can find references to them throughout Europe. With new settlements in America, vampire lore spread there too, eventually turning into the Twilight Saga. These anti-vampire burials are characterized by evidence of precautions taken to prevent those who bit the dust from rising. Such measures could include placing large stones on the deceased's legs or even piercing the body with a lance to fix it to the ground. To be completely safe, they could also consider removing the head from the torso. So, burying the body face down, cutting off the head, and pressing the body with a stone were the methods used to keep someone believed to be a demonic being from leaving the grave. Let's return to the poor lady, or rather, the girl. A couple of archaeologists, Dariusz Poliński and his partner, Magna Durodzka, who happened to be partners in both crime and life, stumbled upon her grave. Strangely, all of her 206 bones remained untouched. Yet no gravestone, no name, nothing. Just a lonely grave on a hill in northern Poland. Poliński, a professor of archaeology, and Zagrodzka began piecing together the story of the woman they eventually named Zosia. Carbon dating suggested she had been about 18 years old and had passed away about 350 years ago during a chaotic time in Poland's history. There is little documentation about this graveyard, which seemed to serve as a resting place for individuals marginalized by the community. Was Zosia a poor girl who had been marginalized because life forced her into the worst situation a lady could face? Not really. As the archaeologists delved deeper, they stumbled upon some hints that indicated she might have hailed from a rich family. Her burial featured a stylish bonnet, and the delicate silk along with shiny silver and gold threads found with it suggested that it was part of an elegant headdress. This all pointed to the idea that she had some serious status or wealth. But the way she was buried indicated her outsider status in the village of Pien. Perhaps her presence there was unwanted, hence the idea of her being a vampire, backed up by the manner in which she was forced into the grave and held there. By analyzing the structure of her skull and extricating DNA from her skeleton, scientists created a reconstruction of what her face might have looked like. The specialists meticulously reshaped Zosia's likeness using modeling clay on a 3D printed model of her skull, which proved to be a deeply moving experience. They remarked that while they often worked on face reconstructions, in this case, they also sought to restore her dignity. Utilizing these three methods, the team reconstructed Zosia's 400-year-old face, revealing the human story buried beneath supernatural beliefs. It's ironic, isn't it? First, people tried their hardest to make the world forget her face and prevent her from ever coming back. 400 years later, people did everything they could to bring her back to life. Her picture now is all over the internet, yet we will never see the faces of those who buried her. Alas, this reconstruction project only allows viewers to visually connect with Zosia, but her true story remains a mystery. But what we know for sure is that people who were deemed vampires were badly discriminated against, to say the least. Rumor had it that hungry vampires would even steal people to quench their thirst. Let's use math to prove this rumor wrong and prove that Zosia wasn't one of them. Back in the year 1600, there were only 537 million people worldwide. Yeah, this data may not be very accurate, but it's pretty close to reality. A physicist, Kostas Eftimiou, calculated that if a vampire had been drinking one person's blood each month, humanity would have faced extinction within a few years. Starting with one vampire and a population of 537 million in 1600, this math shows we'd have no humans left by July 1602. But here we are now. Well, while placing a stone on a corpse to make sure the vampire doesn't rise may be something new to you, there are also a bunch of stereotypical things associated with these creatures that you definitely know, such as garlic and mirrors. Funnily enough, even though it's all based on a bunch of superstitions, there's pretty good logic behind the garlic thing. You see, it contains a special compound called allicin, which is a powerful antibiotic. While people back then couldn't know what an antibiotic was, they noticed garlic was pretty effective against various conditions. Since they believed vampires were created by a particular blood condition, they also believed garlic could defeat a vampire. And there's more. there's actually a blood condition called porphyria, which makes people look like real vampires. Their skin is pale and their teeth get bigger as their gums shrink. And guess what? People who have porphyria cannot consume garlic, as it worsens their condition. Wow, that's a cool coincidence. The next superstition is a bit fresher, and it's about vampires avoiding mirrors. The first known reference to the mirrors comes from the book Dracula in 1897. But why wouldn't a vampire show a reflection? Simple. Before the plastic era we live in, mirrors were traditionally backed with silver. Silver was commonly believed to repel evil spirits, possibly because it has antimicrobial properties. Much like garlic, its healing properties may be what was supposed to scare off a vampire. Another reason why suspected vampires may have avoided mirrors is the changes to their appearance from conditions commonly confused with vampirism, like porphyria and rabies. People afflicted with these conditions may have avoided looking in mirrors for that reason, causing others to assume that vampires avoided mirrors. But if you ever met a vampire and these methods don't repel it, I have one more trick for you. Ask the potential vampire to count. It can be spilled grains, seeds, or even the holes in the fishing net if you happen to have one. Vampires are into math, so they'll stop to count, delaying them until sunrise. And we all know that vampires don't do well in sunlight. Ironically, it's Count Von Count, a vampire who teaches us how to count on Sesame Street.
Archaeologists have been studying Petra in Jordan for 200 years, and in 2024, they found something they had never seen before. It's a tomb with at least 12 complete human skeletons and artifacts that are over 2,000 years old right in front of the treasury. Bronze, iron, and ceramic items were placed with the deceased, which shows how people honored their loved ones when they passed away. It's a rare chance for scientists to learn more about the Nabateans, an ancient group of Arabian nomads who built Petra. The objects found in the tomb under Petra's treasury are in amazing condition, but the skeletons became fragile because it's damp inside the tomb. They plan to study the remains and extract DNA to see if the people in the tomb were related. While some scientists are solving tomb mysteries, others have trained AI to find new ancient sites for them. They've created an algorithm that works with a special type of satellite imagery. This technique uses radio waves that can peek under things like sand, soil, and even ice to find hidden objects. AI will help search a huge desert on the Arabian Peninsula called the Empty Quarter for archaeological treasures. The lead scientists of the experiment trained the algorithm to recognize hidden locations using data from a site they had found before. The new tech can discover buried structures within 20 inches, which is very precise. Another groundbreaking tech, LiDAR, which means light detection and ranging, helped archaeologists reveal new hidden cities all around the world. LiDAR can see big structures beneath layers of vegetation and map even subtle changes in ancient landscapes. They use it to scan large areas from a small plane flying over places that aren't so easy to study from the ground, like dense jungle. In 2024 alone, they found new Maya settlements in southern Mexico, gardens, roads, and rivers in Ecuador's Amazon rainforest, ancient ruins on the Pacific island of Tonga, and the remains of 2 medieval cities along the Silk Road route in Uzbekistan. Maybe some smart technology can also explain what Marge Simpson is doing on Earth in an ancient Egyptian tomb from 3,000 years ago. The drawing, featuring a woman with yellow-colored skin, a blue crown, and a green outfit, is alarmingly like the famous cartoon character. If you don't see a resemblance here, I hope you'll at least enjoy an amazingly well-preserved necklace with amethyst and agate beads. It's from another recent find from Egypt, an ancient tomb with 11 sealed burials near Luxor. Archaeologists also found 2 copper mirrors, one with a lotus-shaped handle and the second with a unique design of the deity of the sky, women, fertility, and love in ancient Egypt. The hair of the figurine was originally made from almost 4,000 mud beads. Another awesome find from 2024 is an ancient Greek shrine with intact burials, a sarcophagus, and plenty of gold inside. They think it was built before the year 300 before the Common Era. and the marble lions, also found inside, were made from the same marble as the Parthenon in Athens. Greece is so full of ancient treasures that the city of Thessaloniki will house around 300,000 of those artifacts in their new subway system. Meanwhile, archaeologists in France have found a monument unlike any other, and they can't figure out what it was used for. It's direct proof that people used to live here between the Neolithic and the early Iron Age periods. The coolest part is a monument made of 3 unique shapes that fit together like puzzle pieces. Some gravel found in the monument could mean there used to be a wooden fence called a palisade. People who built it probably used it for protection or decoration. The team studied the layers of soil around the monument to learn more about its origins. The only tools found so far were sharp flintstones, not the cartoon characters, which were used during the Neolithic period. The next step will be radiocarbon dating to figure out exactly how old the site is. Now, the oldest saddle ever found so far was found in the grave of a woman near the edge of the Taklamakan Desert in northwest China. This saddle is the oldest ever discovered. It was crafted from pieces of leather that were sewn together and stuffed with straw and animal hair to make it soft. Now, normally, things made from natural materials like this don't last very long because they rot or fall apart. But the Taklamakan Desert is so dry that it helped preserve the artifact. The herdswoman who used the saddle was buried in her full riding attire, so this proves that not only men used saddles and took part in herding and traveling. Now let's shift to Guatemala, where an ornate jade mask made by the ancient Maya people was waiting for centuries to be discovered. Scientists use radiocarbon dating to figure out the age of the mask. They believe the mask may represent a Maya storm deity, a powerful figure in their mythology. These kinds of masks were often made to honor Maya royalty, and they were placed in the tombs of kings and queens when they were buried. The king's tomb was also decorated with carvings made using tools crafted from volcanic obsidian. After 15 years of searching, scientists may have finally figured out where the altar stone of Stonehenge comes from. They compared the tiny minerals inside the altar stone with rocks from many places in Wales and England and ruled out lots of spots. Then they found the perfect match with a place in Scotland, more than 466 miles away from Stonehenge. This area might even be Orkney, a group of islands in the far northeast of Scotland where a lot was going on during the Neolithic period. The big question now is how ancient people moved such a massive stone so far. The altar stone is over 16 feet long and weighs more than 6 tons. The new theory is that they might have used boats to carry it across the coastline and rivers. Once it was close to Stonehenge, they theoretically dragged it across the land using wooden sleds, ropes, and a lot of teamwork. Meanwhile, in the north of France, an ancient home popped to the surface during the construction of a new house. It turned out to be a luxury urban house for the elite from the 2nd century of the Common Era. The inside of the house was destroyed by a fire, but under the destroyed layer, there are beautiful real-size fresco paintings. Turkish archaeologists unearthed the arm and foot bones of elephants that lived around 9 million years ago. They also found fossils of early horses, giraffes, and even saber-toothed cats. They've already identified 43 distinct types of animals from this site and collected more than 4,000 fossils. One more cool find from Turkey is a 64,000-year-old workshop inside Enkaja Cave. It looks like people used it for 24,000 years non-stop. There are some tools inside, like flakes and blades, which were made inside the workshop. In eastern Turkey, a farmer accidentally found a 1,000-square-foot mosaic from the late Roman or early Byzantine period just beneath the dirt. Experts say it's a one-of-a-kind thing from this region, and it's still in one piece after all this time. The pattern shows dozens of trees, plants, and animals that were found in ancient Turkey. There could be more treasures in the area, so they plan to keep digging. Our final stop will be in Sicily, where archaeologists uncovered a huge ancient thermal complex. Inside, they found 2 rooms with floors covered in colorful mosaic designs, along with a large courtyard surrounded by arched wings. As they kept digging, they discovered more parts of the ancient city. They found new roads and the remains of a huge complex, along with stretches of old stone walls that were part of the city's fortifications. These discoveries are helping scientists imagine what the city might have looked like during ancient times. No one knows for sure whether the bathhouse was built by the Greeks or the Romans, since both civilizations lived in Sicily long ago. Okay, what if I tell you that the extraterrestrials we all imagine as little green men may actually look like very normal Earthlings and chill in Europe? This is the Iberian Peninsula, and people living there are under suspicion. Ooh. Here's the reason. Somehow, parts of the most important artifacts that the Iberian civilization called Treasure of Villena are made of metal that simply can't be found on Earth, because it's metal from a meteorite. Now let's tackle this step by step. This is the artifact itself, and it's composed of 59 different objects. Bowls, bottles, and bracelets. Is there a pattern there with all those bees? In total, the find weighs around 20 pounds, of which 18 pounds are 23.5 karat gold. Now, if you're not a metal specialist, I'll clarify it for you right away. For comparison, 23 karat gold is 95.8% pure gold, so 23.5 karat is even purer. The remaining percentage goes to other metals to help add strength and durability to the precious alloy. There was also silver, iron, and amber in that set. The artifact could have been pretty straightforward, but for these two, let's call them imposters. Look at this wrought iron bracelet and this hollow hemisphere. Can you see that? Those rusty lines on the hemisphere and the overall weird color of the bracelet do stand out, since everything else is made of purest gold. This all started back in 1963, when a researcher noticed a dark leaden metal among the shiny bowls and bottles. The metal was shiny in some areas and covered with a ferrous-looking oxide that was mostly cracked. Now, just so you understand, gold does not usually act this way. Gold is one of the least reactive of all metals, so it won't even tarnish, let alone rust. To figure out where this suspicious iron came from, researchers turned to mass spectrometry, which checks out the mass-to-charge ratio of molecules. Their findings showed that the nickel in the iron is similar to that found in meteoritic iron. Simply put, the bracelet and the hemisphere are of extraterrestrial origin. Ooh. Now, the exact age of the trove is hard to determine, yet it's crucial. We need to know the exact age to see if it coincides with the start of the Iron Age in the Iberian Peninsula. If it does, then no further questions here. But if it doesn't, well, it's, at the very least, weird, if not suspicious. So there's this three-age system. It comprises the Stone Age, then the Bronze Age, and then the Iron Age. The Stone Age is of no importance here, so let's compare the Bronze and the Iron Ages. The Bronze Age began when it was realized that combining copper and tin produced a material that was more durable than either metal alone. This era was all about major upgrades in tools and weapons, but two standout inventions were writing systems and the wheel. Then came the Iron Age. This time was all about slowly bringing iron into everyday life. Iron was way easier to shape into cool designs than bronze. Now this was a big deal, because iron, especially transformed into steel, provided significant improvements in all aspects of life. Tools became lighter, cheaper, and stronger compared to their bronze equivalents. You get it? Good. So researchers have long debated whether the treasure dates back to the post-Archaeoric era or the latter part of the Bronze Age. The most recent study claims that those artifacts were created in 1400 to 1200 BCE, and something really doesn't add up. First off, the Iron Age began around 500 years after these artifacts were crafted. Plus, ancient craftsmen couldn't know back then how to work with metals that landed on Earth approximately 1 million years ago. And while the dates are really hard to explain, there is a logical explanation for the craftsmanship. The theory here is that those metal workers simply had access to the fallen meteorite, and thus they could study it well and discover its properties before using it for decorative purposes. They could have figured it out through trial and error, and once they knew exactly how to work with this extraterrestrial metal, they proceeded to adorn the artifacts with it. Plus, there were the Phoenicians, who contributed to their craftsmanship. Now, it's true that the Iberian people have been processing metal and making pottery long before the Phoenicians settled on the peninsula. But the arrival of new metalworking techniques and the introduction of the potter's wheel enabled them to produce better quality goods much faster than before. So, we figured out the extraterrestrial origins of the Iberian artifacts. But guess what? This area is still under suspicion. The reason for that is the language they spoke. You see, for most modern languages people use today, there will always be some proto-language. Say for Italian, Spanish, and French, it's Latin, hence their similarities. But wait, Iberian was largely spoken where modern Spain is, so why isn't Spanish similar to it? Well, the truth is, no language today is similar to the Iberian. Maybe only the Basque language, but it's because of some similarities found in their numerical systems. Basque is classified as a language isolate, or simply unrelated to any other known languages, and the only language isolate in Europe. The Iberian language is unclassified. While the scripts written in it have been deciphered to various extents, the language itself remains largely unknown. And look at the alphabet the Iberians had. Looks like it doesn't really belong to our planet. But hold up, this one might be a bit of a stretch. When the Phoenicians came to the peninsula, they brought along their alphabet to the Iberians. But honestly, the Iberians probably weren't keen on just copying someone else's writing system, so they tweaked it until it looked completely different. Let's just say they took some inspiration and ran with it. While linguists can guess to some extent how most characters sounded, actually translating the language is still completely impossible. The Iberian language was non-Indo-European and faded away over 2,000 years ago. And there aren't any similar languages left to help us out. Super frustrating, right? Yeah. We got over 2,000 Iberian inscriptions from tombs, coins, potteries, lead plates, and even cave wall carvings. But aside from a handful of words, we're totally in the dark about what they mean. Now, if we could understand their language, we might have learned that they were great thinkers and all, but we can only contemplate the works of art they left. Iberian culture has a lot of amazing stuff made by talented artisans. We're talking about not just metalwork and ceramics, but also detailed sculptures, textiles, jewelry, and other personal bling. But here's the catch. Making all those luxury items depended a lot on a big farming class. At the heart of Iberian society, most folks were involved in farming and taking care of livestock. Depending on where you were, the types of farming varied. For example, up in the north, they were all about growing grains, while down in Valencia, they focused on producing olive oil and other agricultural aspects. In the west, raising animals was the name of the game. Still, we don't have much information about the day-to-day lives of the many people doing this essential work. Yet, on the flip side, we know a lot about the upper class of Iberian society, who control these agricultural resources and hire the artisans. By the 7th century BCE, we start to see a group of Iberian princes who were living the good life, trading with the Phoenicians, and enjoying fancy luxury items. You can spot this elite class in their burial practices. Cremation was the go-to method for funerals among the Iberians, and wealthy individuals were often found in cemeteries with all sorts of lavish goods and funerary sculptures that give us a peek into the fashion and hairstyles of the rich. Interestingly, starting in the 6th century BCE, there was a noticeable drop in the number of recognizable burials, which suggests that these elaborate funeral customs became more exclusive to a small elite. Meanwhile, the fate of the majority, farmers, artisans, soldiers, and laborers, who made up a big chunk of the population, remains a bit of a mystery. It used to be a pretty advanced civilization, but it vanished without a trace. Researchers think it could have been due to some massive earthquake, but so far we don't know for sure.
For years, the world's most valuable shipwreck was just a legend, until now. It has finally been found, and among the wreckage was a real treasure worth $1.1 billion. To understand this better, we need to go back to 1622. That year, the mighty Spanish galleon Nuestra Señora de Atocha set sail from Havana, packed with riches belonging both to King Philip IV of Spain and to the wealthy members of the crew. We're talking about gold, silver, copper, and emeralds from Colombia, Peru, Mexico, and Venezuela. The cargo was so large, totaling more than 40 tons, and so vast that it took 2 months to transport it to the ship. The ship was also packed with people. There were 265 people on board. At first, everything went well, but then came the Florida Straits and trouble. The crew found themselves lost in the night that was not only cold, but also stormy. And before long, they were facing a powerful hurricane. The wind tore the masts apart. Giant waves destroyed the rudder, and soon, the Atocha was sinking toward the darkness of the seabed. The disaster that night meant a huge loss of wealth for King Philip IV, but even worse was the loss of life. Of the original 265 crew members, only 5 survived. They managed to climb up the mizzen of the ship, the only part that remained above water. With all that treasure gone, the Spanish were quick to spring into action and devised a salvage operation. 5 ships were sent to recover the cargo. The plan seemed simple and easy. After all, the hatches were securely locked, so the treasure could still be there. But almost immediately, things went wrong. For example, one of the 5 ships ran aground before it could even begin its journey. In the end, the search dragged on for 60 years, and many factors contributed to the mission's failure. That may not seem so bad today, but back then, divers didn't have the technology or safety equipment that we have today. Exploring the seabed was risky, and more often than not, it led nowhere. While searching for the Atocha, the rescuers found traces of another vessel, the Santa Margarita, the Atocha's sister ship. Another hurricane passed through the region a month after the sinking. The seabed became a jigsaw puzzle with pieces of the ship scattered everywhere. The rescue mission became almost impossible. Over time, the Spanish managed to recover part of the Santa Margarita's cargo, but Atocha's treasure seemed lost forever. Even so, no one forgot that story. Then in 1969, more than 300 years after the sinking, everything began to change. An experienced deep-sea diver, Mel Fisher, stepped in and decided to rewrite history. Mel had already spent a big part of his life at the bottom of the sea. He and his wife even ran a diving school in California. So, Mel gathered his family and moved to the other side of the country. He led a new team of hunters whose mission was clear: to find the lost treasure of the legendary Atocha. They had little more than a boat, some diving equipment, and metal detectors, but that was enough to get them started. They focused on a region called the Matacumbe Keys, mentioned in several 17th century documents. In the first year, they traveled more than 100,000 miles but found absolutely nothing. It seemed like an impossible dream. But Mel still had a card up his sleeve. Eugene Lyon, a historian who would change the course of the search. Eugene delved into the Spanish archives in search of clues about the shipwreck. It was there that he found an important document that mentioned a group of people trying to save it. On the last page, it was mentioned that an area 100 miles from where Mel was searching had been the scene of the main exploration. This little piece of information was the needle in the haystack they needed. They rerouted the ship and soon arrived at the new location. But there was a challenge. That part of the ocean was deeper and the visibility there was almost zero. It was difficult to see your own hands. However, Mel knew how to deal with the adversities of diving and came up with a simple and brilliant solution. He installed 2 large tubes on the boat called letterboxes. Those tubes could be lowered in front of the propellers. The idea was ingenious. They sucked clean water from the surface and directed it to the bottom of the sea, exactly where the divers were. This technique not only cleared the murky water, but also helped to reveal objects that had been hidden for centuries. And still, the search took 16 years. During that time, Fisher found many lost items. Then, in 1971, they discovered a huge anchor. This was the first clue that they were close to finding the Atocha. In the following days, more objects appeared. Cups, swords, and ancient nails turned up. To keep everything organized, the team created a circular map. On it, they marked the exact location of each item they found. They also used radio transmitters on land and a receiver on the boat, which allowed them to know precisely where they were. The system was so efficient that it could measure the position with a margin of error of just 1 foot. Over time, a line began to form on the map, pointing to where the Atocha's main treasure might be hidden. They followed this trail for 2 years. Just when they were starting to lose hope, they found silver bars. It was the year 1973. This opened the door to much bigger discoveries. The silver alone was worth over $100,000, but the real treasure was yet to come. On July 20th, 1985, valuables that would be worth around $1.1 billion today were finally discovered in the main hull of the ship. The treasure included 180,000 silver coins, 24 tons of silver bars, 125 gold bars, a collection of pearls, and 66 pounds of emeralds. Some of these finds were priceless, not only because they were rare, but because of their history. The Atocha Cross, the Royal Orb, and the Atocha Ring, 3 royal artifacts, were found in near-perfect condition. The Atocha Cross was the most valuable of all the artifacts. It had 9 brilliant green emeralds set in 22-karat gold. A true treasure from the past, shining once again after centuries underwater. Soon after the discovery, the state of Florida thought, wait a second, we want a piece of that treasure. They went to court, demanding a whopping 25% of the value. A bitter legal battle ensued, and it lasted 8 years. It even went all the way to the Supreme Court. But in the end, treasure hunter Mel emerged victorious. He was even invited to The Tonight Show, showing off a massive gold chain found in the wreckage, wrapped around his waist like a belt. People called it the money chain, and for good reason. The find was so big that the wreck was declared the world's most valuable by the Guinness Book of Records in 2014. After the initial excitement, Mel sold some of the gems, but the bulk of the treasure remained in the family for a while. What was left was auctioned off. No one knows exactly how much the jewels were sold for, but one thing is for sure. Their value has skyrocketed over the years, and it's not just about the sparkle. It's about the legend that lives behind them. Today, these treasures are part of the particular Muzo collection, the largest private collection of the Atocha artifacts in the world. And no, they're not for sale. But the good news is that you can still see them. They're on display, shining brightly in homage to Colombia's rich history and the famous mine from which they came. The people behind them say that these emeralds are as iconic as the rubies of Mogok or the sapphires of Kashmir. And honestly, they're right. You're probably familiar with the saying, X marks the spot. It comes from pirate lore and adventure stories often linked with treasure maps. They may be out of fashion these days, but that doesn't stop countless antiquity hunters from searching through hills and fields daily. One such enthusiast didn't have a map with a giant X on it, but when his metal detector beeped on a sunny day in April 2025, he uncovered one of the largest buried coin hoards ever recorded. So, what kind of treasure are we talking about here, and what makes it so unique? The discovery was made by Romanian hobbyist Marius Manghia, who says he just wanted an excuse to get some exercise and fresh air. During one of those walks with his metal detector in a location 30 miles southwest of Bucharest, the device picked up a signal. As he began to dig, he found a handful of silver coins just beneath the surface. Though oxidized, they seemed remarkably well preserved. Oxidation happens when metal reacts with air or moisture over time, causing it to change color, darken, or develop a crusty surface. just like a sliced apple darkens when exposed to air if left out too long. The pile of coins grew quickly. Soon, it was obvious they were all packed into a ceramic jar. The final count was nearly 1,500 silver denarii, Roman coins likely buried around 1,700 years ago. However, these denarii date from the reigns of emperors Nero to Marcus Aurelius, covering over a century during the Roman imperial period, which means they're almost 2,000 years old. The presence of coins from multiple emperors suggests that the wealth was accumulated over many years. The Roman money system had a bunch of different coin types, so finding only silver denarii in the stash is a bit odd. It would be like burying $15,000 in cash, but all of it $10 bills. It could mean that the original owner was a trader. Maybe he was hiding his profits during dangerous times. Perhaps it was simply someone's life savings. Depending on the emperor and the period, the value of denarius fluctuated quite a bit, so 1,500 denarii could have been either a comfortable retirement fund or not nearly enough. In the 1st century, 1 silver denarius could get you 12 loaves of bread, and if you have 5 of them, you could buy an amphora full of wine. An amphora was a large 2-handled ceramic jar used to store and transport wine, oil, or grain, and it seems to be the type of vessel in which this treasure was buried. Though amphorae were made in many different shapes and sizes, the Romans eventually standardized them as a unit of measurement, with 1 amphora being roughly equal to 7 gallons of liquid. The spot where the jar was buried wasn't tampered with. This might indicate that the hoard remained undetected all this time, but the amphora had already been broken when it was found. But why would it be broken, and what could that mean? While the exact cause of the breakage has not been explained yet, archaeologists say it may have been broken on purpose as part of a protective ritual before burial. In some ancient cultures, ritual vessels were deliberately damaged as a symbolic act. Maybe it means the jar had done its job, either as an offering to the gods or to keep someone from stealing it. You can have my silver, but I'm not giving you my precious jar. However, such rituals were not common in Roman culture, so it's a mystery for now. Perhaps it broke because the jar contained silver while being exposed to 2 millennia of soil pressure, freeze-thaw cycles, root growth, or a blind mole rat trying to find its way around. Although the amphora and its silver are now being preserved and examined by experts, their discoverer almost ended up unrewarded. After finding the hoard, he had to notify the police so they could secure the site. However, he was under pressure because in Romania, you have 72 hours to report any significant historical find. Unfortunately for Mr. Mangiac, he ran into a problem since it was a holiday and the offices he needed to contact were closed. He spent the following 2 days meticulously photographing every single coin before finally being able to present his findings to the authorities. While the exact amount of prize Mr. Mangiac might receive isn't publicly known, Romanian law typically awards 45% of a discovery's appraised value to the finder. Not a bad outcome for what started as a casual walk with a metal detector. Meanwhile, the site itself had been declared an archaeological zone, and any future digging will be done under expert supervision, which means that this story might have a follow-up one day. But for now, let's focus on what makes metal detectors beep and see if there are more hidden troves to be found around the world. Today, most hobby-grade detectors rely on something called VLF technology, where VLF stands for very low frequency. When you sweep the detector over the ground, its coil sends out an invisible magnetic field. If something metallic is within that field, for example a nail, a discarded wedding ring, or ancient Roman silver, it bounces back a signal. The device picks that up and beeps to let you know something's there. The stronger the signal, the closer or bigger the object probably is. Basically, it's using electromagnetic induction to make buried metal respond, like calling into a cave and listening for the echo coming back at you. Fun fact, bats use a similar principle to detect what's in their environment, but with sound. It's called echolocation. If you yell in a cave and disturb a bat, it might send out high-pitched clicks that bounce off objects and return as echoes, helping them pinpoint everything around them. Doesn't matter if it's a tiny insect or a pesky human in complete darkness. Metal detectors use magnetic waves. Bats use squeaks and echoes. Now, if all this got you curious about grabbing a detector yourself, what are some major locations to consider? Mr. Mangiak simply went for a walk, but for many, it's a rewarding hobby that helps history and also pays off well. And not just in Romania, but all over the world. In the UK, regions like Norfolk, Suffolk, and Lincolnshire have become hotspots where enthusiasts regularly uncover Roman coins, Viking relics, and medieval artifacts. During the Iron Age, burying valuables was a common practice. Some researchers think it was done as a way of storing valuables. Others think it was part of a ritual. But either way, many of those hoards could still be there. France also has plenty of stuff hidden beneath the ground, including ancient Roman and Gallic treasures. In the Netherlands, someone recently uncovered a fragment of an extremely rare Viking sword. Scotland is no exception either, and findings like Peebles' hoard give additional insights into the Bronze Age. If you don't feel like venturing alone, there are organized metal detecting tours available in various countries, offering guided access to historically rich sites. That's if you're planning to search for lost relics. But what if you want to bury your own treasure chest and hide it from a metal detector? How far do you need to dig? Most hobby-grade detectors can spot a large object close to 3 feet deep. Smaller stuff like coins, just 6 to 8 inches. We also have to take into consideration that wet ground can actually boost detection. It helps signals travel better and makes buried metal easier to spot. On the other hand, professional, expensive detectors that use advanced technology can detect large metallic targets at depths of almost 100 feet, especially on a rainy day. But unless you bury your chest in a strategically important place, odds are it'll stay uncovered. Just don't forget to mark the spot on your map with an X. You are lost deep within the jungle in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. There are strange noises all around you, and to make it worse, the sun is setting. Soon, you'll be alone in the middle of an unknown rainforest. Guess it was a pretty bad idea to come looking for El Dorado on your own, wasn't it? You keep walking as fast as you can, when suddenly, wait! What's this you're seeing? It looks like large stairways made out of stone. This definitely doesn't look natural, so you take a picture. Maybe you didn't strike gold, but you might have just found something relevant. Congratulations! You found Akhumtun, a long-lost Mayan city, hidden 37 miles into the jungle. The name literally translates to stone column. Stone was probably in at the time, so these guys used a lot of it to build their pyramids, houses, and even ball courts. If you ever thought that Europeans invented ball games, think twice. Mayans loved to play ball games for recreational purposes. Akhumtun is part of a series of other long-lost Mayan cities that are being discovered with the help of new technology nowadays. We'll talk more about the other ones in a jiffy. Perhaps the biggest surprise of this one is that it was surrounded by wetlands, which is why the city was built on high ground. The city was monumental, covering an area of over 120 acres. That would be as big as 90 football fields right next to each other. Scientists have found proof that Akhumtun had pyramids of up to 49 feet high, and that it was likely an important social hub between 250 and 1000 CE. This is definitely a game changer. But lost Mayan cities began to be unearthed in the 19th century. Modern technologies, such as LiDAR imaging, help archaeologists see through dense canopies of the forests. This means that people don't really have to risk getting lost in the tropical jungle like you did at the beginning of this video. LiDAR works sort of like an X-ray. It sends out laser beams that can detect any signs of ruins or ancient constructions. According to space archaeologist Sarah Parchak, satellite imagery has been a key player in discovering ancient cities in South America, Egypt, and other places. Sarah herself spends most of her days scouring images for any signs of where there could have been cities long ago. She says that more often than not, what happens is that ruins are covered by vegetation, soil, or sand, which makes them super tricky to find. But thanks to these awesome tools, scientists also made the huge discovery of ancient Mayan causeways, which spread throughout old Mayan territories. I mean, take a look at these roadways. You'd expect to see ruins like this in places such as Portugal, England, or the United States. I'm talking about 130 feet wide roads painted white to help travelers journey through the nighttime. Scientists recently unearthed a 110-mile network of roads such as these, and they think this dates back to before the first registered Mayan highways we've known so far. These roadways, which sometimes ran over the swampy ground and were even elevated at times, are being called the world's first superhighways. Even if there is no registry of animal-powered vehicles, it's believed that the Maya used them to travel around a network of possible 964 settlements. They were built like a huge spiderweb, and from what archaeologists have gathered, this huge system of roads worked to connect a big system of economic and social interactions between Mayan cities. This completely debunks the traditional idea that the Mayan pre-classic period, which dates back to 2000 BCE, was made of small, tribal settlements. Imagine the manpower and engineering ability you need to muster to build something close to these white highways. Scientists believe that these causeways were built pretty much the same way as the Mayans built their pyramids, with a mixture of mud and quarry stone. Oh, and using several layers of limestone to make them white. That's pretty cool, right? But let's take a few steps back for a moment to get some context. The Mayans were one of the biggest pre-Columbian civilizations living in the Americas. Until now, experts believe that at its apex, the Mayan civilization consisted of over 40 cities with a population of millions of people. That's a lot of folks. Their civilization spanned Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, Guatemala, and Belize. And they survived mainly on agriculture. The thing is, the Yucatan Peninsula was an extremely difficult place to grow crops. So the Mayans had to develop a complex irrigation system in most of their cities. They built a series of ceremonial buildings, pyramids, and plazas. The Mayans might have been keen pyramid builders, but they also developed an advanced astronomical system. With whatever ancient technology they had, they were able to predict the exact location of planets such as Venus and Mars, as well as the exact dates of eclipses. If you've ever seen examples of ancient Mayan cities, this is Tikal. Located at the heart of the Guatemalan jungle, Tikal is believed to have been the capital of the ancient Mayan conquest state. At its height, it was comparable in importance to cities such as London or New York in today's world. It's composed of a series of complex monuments. The North Acropolis is one of Tikal's most ancient complexes of monuments. Built solely by human hands around 350 BCE, it served as the resting place of kings and chiefs. Its monuments are up to 200 feet high. Back in the day, the step pyramid temples were painted a beautiful red. Mayans loved that color. Today, of course, you'll only see the limestone. Then there's Chichen Itza. It's got one of the best preserved pyramids on Earth to date. Located in Mexico's Yucatan state, this Mayan city is well over 1,500 years old. At its peak, it was home to 35,000 people. The site covers 4 square miles of land. The highlight is El Castillo, a tremendous step-like temple standing 80 feet above ground. Its most peculiar feature is that it has 91 steps up each of its 4 sides, including the upper platform, which makes for 365 steps, the same number of days as the solar year. You can see that these folks were a pretty big deal, huh? That's why nobody can really understand what happened to them. There's a big lack of evidence on the decline of this almighty empire. What could have been the cause of their demise? Was it a drought? New research in 2017 did bring some new discoveries into the mix. Using data from a site at Ceibal, located at southwest of Tikal, scientists analyzed radiocarbon data from ceramics and archaeological excavations to extract new information about the unexpected demise of this great civilization. The information shows that instead of a sudden collapse, the Mayans most likely fell in waves of social instability and political crises. These events are believed to have deteriorated Mayan city centers and began causing the dispersion of the Mayan population. It's hard to pinpoint the exact causes, though. But hey, recent discoveries are shedding a big light on humanity's past. Not only about the Mayan Empire, but about other long-lost civilizations of South America. A major recent discovery in Brazil was done using satellite imaging technology and is also shocking scientists. Some images from near the Xingu River, also in the Amazon, suggest that cities of millions of people might have existed inside the jungle, way before our modern civilization ever existed. I mean, if this doesn't shock you, I don't know what will. Satellite imagery also detected a network of trenches dating back to 200 and 1200 CE in the Bolivian Amazon forest. These proofs suggest settlements that could have supported around 60,000 people right in the middle of the Amazon forest. When researchers from the University of Florida went on ground to check the satellite information, they were shocked to find several mounds that were accompanied by ditches and geoglyphs. Archaeologists also found remnants of carefully designed walls centered around plazas, much like the type of construction done by the ancient Mayans. Hey, check this out. Does this pebble look like a face to you? Especially with that red dot in the middle. If yes, you might be staring at the world's first emoji. It was uncovered in Spain and it's 43,000 years old. And that red spot was made by a Neanderthal with a finger. That means this isn't just a dot, it's the oldest fingerprint ever found. But was this really a nose on a grumpy face? And why is that important? Because it hints at something big. A mind seeing shapes, then choosing to add meaning. The palm-sized rock was discovered in a Paleolithic rock shelter tucked away under some light-colored chalky cliffs. It was pretty much a natural overhang where Neanderthals used to hang out. They called it home tens of thousands of years ago. As for the pebble, to me, the dot seems like a random ketchup stain from ages ago. But real archaeologists know better. The neat placement instantly caught their attention. After running tests, they determined that the stain wasn't natural. It seems intentional, not random. Their guess? Someone thousands of years ago may have dipped a fingertip into a mix of ochre pigment and water, then pressed it onto the stone, leaving a tiny prehistoric stamp. To put that theory to the test, they called forensic experts from Spain's national police. At first, the specialists were pretty doubtful. After all, this was the ultimate definition of a cold case. But with multispectral imaging, which lets scientists study surfaces under different wavelengths of light, something amazing popped up: clear fingerprint ridges. The print's rounded form showed it came from the tip of a finger. Comparing it with fingerprint databases, the evidence pointed to one likely candidate: an adult male, not a woman or a child. Finding any fingerprint this old is insanely rare. Pigments usually fade, rocks erode, and time wipes away delicate details like ridges. When it comes to fingerprints, the unique patterns actually form before you're even born. During pregnancy, they never change. You might wonder, could a clever criminal damage their skin to erase their fingerprints and fool the cops? Turns out that's basically impossible. Fingerprints aren't just on the surface. They form deep in the skin, in a layer called the dermis. Even if you burn, cut, or scar the outer layer, the patterns underneath usually stay the same and even heal back. Scars might distort the print a little, but that won't help. Ironically, those scars often become a new kind of fingerprint, unique to the person. With today's forensic tools, even a partial print is enough, not to mention the DNA. Yes, fingerprints are just patterns, but they usually come with sweat, skin cells, or oils that may contain DNA. Here's another cool fact. Koalas also have unique fingerprints just like we do. Under a microscope, even experts sometimes struggle to tell them apart from human prints. Scientists think these ridges help koalas grip branches and pick leaves with precision. The bottom line, fingerprints are basically nature's unhackable signature. It's something humans, Neanderthals, and apparently even koalas have been leaving behind for tens of thousands of years. If it's been a while since your biology classes, here are some clarifications. Neanderthals weren't our direct ancestors, they're more like our long-lost cousins. Colloquially, we call them humans too. But for scientists, Neanderthals and modern humans were different species within the same genus. Kinda like how lions and tigers are both big cats, but they're not the same species. Homo sapiens and Homo neanderthalensis split from a common ancestor hundreds of thousands of years ago. Neanderthals dominated Ice Age Europe. When Homo sapiens arrived around 45,000 years ago, the two met, mixed, and today, most people outside Africa carry about 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. Eventually, the balance shifted. Within just a few thousand years, Neanderthals disappeared, while modern humans kept spreading. Scientists think it was a mix of different factors. Shifting climates made food scarce, new neighbors brought competition, and their small, scattered populations just made survival even tougher. Now, here's why this little fingerprint is such a big deal. For decades, scientists thought Neanderthals were just built for survival. Strong, but simple. Homo sapiens were supposed to be the creative ones. For a long time, scientists thought they were special because they could think in symbols. Tens of thousands of years ago, our ancestors carved patterns into stones, painted animals on cave walls, and wore beads and pigments as decoration. The earliest proof of symbolic art comes from Blombos Cave in South Africa, where humans etched deliberate designs on pieces of red ochre over 70,000 years ago. Those symbols had no survival purpose. Researchers believe they were expressions of ideas, identity, and meaning. That ability to imagine and represent things we couldn't see was thought to be uniquely human. But this one tiny red dot on a stone challenges that idea. See, the stone already looked like a face, and someone all the way back deliberately pressed a red nose right where it should be. That's symbolic thinking. That could mean that Neanderthals weren't just making tools and hunting mammoths. Perhaps they were able to imagine things. And this isn't just the only clue. This fingerprint is part of a growing pattern that shows Neanderthals were way more like us than we ever believed. For example, in Cova Negra, Spain, archaeologists uncovered the skeleton of a Neanderthal child who had a serious ear condition that made life incredibly hard. However, the little one lived to be around 6 years old. Now, remember, this was the Ice Age. Just managing on your own was challenging. Survival was tough. Food was scarce and danger was everywhere. Yet, someone made sure that the child was looked after, fed, and kept safe. Scientists believe that this shows a trait of compassion, something we once believed only our species was capable of. In Iraq, scientists found a Neanderthal skeleton sprinkled with flower pollen. Sounds random. Maybe not. Some believe it was part of a funeral ritual, like the world's first floral tribute. If that's true, Neanderthals weren't just surviving, they were remembering and honoring life. Neanderthals were apparently quite resourceful. Around 176,000 years ago, they were stacking stalagmites into neat circles in Bruniquel Cave in France. Was this some kind of ritual or just curiosity? Maybe this means that they had the idea of planning and changing their surroundings. Then around 130,000 years ago, they took eagle talons and turned them into jewelry in Croatia. Yep, early bling. This suggests they were into looking good and possibly showing off a bit socially. There were no sewing machines back then, but Neanderthals had stone scrapers and even bone needles. With those, they crafted animal skin outfits that were perfect for the freezing Ice Age climate. When you step back and consider all of these, that tiny red fingerprint isn't just a mark on stone. If it was meant to represent a nose, it's part of a much bigger story. Neanderthals cared for one another, crafted tools and clothing, created jewelry, painted on cave walls, and built mysterious structures deep in caves. Basically, they were thinking a lot more like us than we used to imagine. And here's the fun part. What if that little red dot wasn't meant to be a nose at all? Maybe it was a joke, a charm, or just a doodle. Heck, it could have been the first face meme scratched onto rock. Whatever it was, unless it really was an accident, it shows imagination. So the next time you send an emoji, remember that Neanderthals had the same idea. Personally, I like that it's a grumpy one, but at the very least, we now have the oldest fingerprint ever discovered. That alone is extraordinary. But add the fact that the print was placed right on a stone that already resembled a face, and suddenly, the questions multiply. Let's hope the researchers discover more about it so we can know for sure. What we do know is that 43,000 years ago, a Neanderthal pressed a finger onto stone and left us with one of the most personal signatures in prehistory.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.